Pirates starting from the strongest swordsman. Chapter 251-300. Chapter 181 Looking for. I only heard that when Pudding's group was discussing how to avenge them, all of them were so excited that they wanted to smash Anjali to pieces, but Anjali didn't know it at this time, but he was quite at ease. You are right, Ant must not let that foreign bastard be killed in vain. She must get justice for Ant, or she will die under Juquan. Give him a lesson, so that he will not be so arrogant. It seems that he really treats himself as a hero, which is really disgusting. When I mention Ant, I feel that it is not worth it, and it will inevitably burst out foul language. Kuina, who can hear clearly, naturally cannot recognize that this group of people hurt Anjali. If you are Kuina, leave quietly, and the second child will follow Kuina's footsteps followed. Finally, they were far away from the people who were planning, and after a certain distance, the second child held Kuina tightly, which really made Kuina very puzzled. Why are you dragging me? Didn't you hear what the group was discussing just now? You can't just watch Anjali get revenge by these people, right? You conscienceless fellow. Kuina spoke to Zoro in a somewhat reproachful tone, but only saw Zoro with a confident look on his face, without any nervous expression. Why should you be so nervous? I didn't believe that Anjali. In my opinion, these little guys are not enough to threaten Anjali. Then you want to kill them. It's just a matter of minutes. If they really want to go to Anjali, if you want to take revenge, you are simply asking for hardships, or you can take this opportunity to let them taste the power of Anjali. These words, Kuina's expression was really shaken. After all, after asking himself, he still believed in Anjali's power, but she still wanted to tell her because of the woman's worries. Although I said so, but this would be a bit too light on the enemy, but we can't hurt Anjali because we underestimate the enemy. Kuina still had some scruples, but after Zoro's repeated dissuasion, he finally did not report to Anjali, and had to reluctantly obey Zoro. At that time, if there are really any problems, I will never spare you. Kuina pointed to Zoro's nose, and then said to Zoro with a vicious look. Zoro pretended to agree to his words, and then the two of them went back to the same way again. After finding the opportunity, we will proceed according to our plan. Absolutely not. Let that kid escape. This time it is entirely up to his fate. I want to see if the god of luck will favor such a ruthless man. After Pudding finished speaking, he broke his wrist. The sound of brittle bones. Kaba. It seemed that he was determined not to bypass Anjali. After everything was discussed, they slowly left the room with good money, but they were not at all wary of whether Kuina and Zoro were present. Zoro whispered to Kuina and made a going motion. The fish also felt a little nervous, and his heart was beating fast, for fear that someone would discover it by accident, and it would be over. The two entered the room like thieves, and then they rummaged through the three-eyed race. Chapter 182 Thrilling. Women are more or less clumsy than men. Because the things in this room are too trivial, Kuina accidentally dropped a video on the table on the ground and made a very sharp noise. This leads Kuina to cover her ears subconsciously, and she is naturally too frightened. Look at how clumsy you are. You can actually get rid of such a big thing. I think you are afraid of being discovered by others, right? If I knew I would come by myself, I won't let you and I be together, lest you drag me down. The furious Zoro impatiently said something unpleasant to Kuina. He was also angry. He didn't really want to say it, and I didn't mean it. Why are you so angry? Besides, even though I made it 333 dropped, but no one came, right? Kuina was still arguing for herself, which made Zoro even more unhappy, but for the sake of Kuina being a woman, she had no choice but to not know her in the same way. She simply gave Kuina a blank eye, and Kuina kept pouting. But it was precisely because of such a coincidental shock that they brought a surprise to them. Unexpectedly, there was a Pudding's diary hidden under this decoration. Kuina hurriedly picked up this beautiful little book, and walked up to Agfb long excitedly. Zoro, come and see, isn't this Pudding's diary? Maybe we can get a lot of information from it. Maybe there are secrets about the three-eyed clan in it. I'm really a genius, so important everything was discovered by me. Zoro rubbed his eyes and saw that it was true. It seemed that the shock just now was not in vain. It was a pie that fell from the sky. You quickly say yes, and then look for it to see if there is anything else useful. It is precisely because Kuina found an important item, which made him a little unconvinced, and determined to find a better one than Kuina, so it can be seen that Zoro's mental head is much stronger than before. Usually there were also more wrinkles between the two. Kuina couldn't help but want to laugh when she saw Zoro like this. What are you laughing at? Hurry up and find it. But after a long time, Zoro still found nothing. He was even a little anxious, but when they were looking for energy, suddenly heard footsteps, followed by Pudding's voice. No, it was Pudding who came back. Why did he come back so quickly? Hurry up and hide. Zoro looked around in a panic, looking for a place to hide. Kuina was also jumping up and down in a hurry, and she didn't know what to expect. Okay, don't just sit there, just go to the closet. I don't think he'll stay here any longer. Suddenly the only hope he saw was a cabinet that could hold a person's body, and then he pulled Kuina's arm fiercely, and the two of them hid in the cabinet together. But the space in the cabinet is indeed limited, and the scene of two people entering can only be regarded as a squeeze, which made Kuina feel a little disgusted, so Kuina looked at everything around with a look of disgust. Chapter 183 was discovered. When Pudding came back from the outside, Kuina and Zoro were about to leave Pudding's room with the diary. Pudding found that there was an outsider's breath in her room as soon as she entered the door. She felt that someone had come, looked around the room and found the things in her room. There were signs of being passive, so she immediately entered a state of combat and began a carpet-like search of the room. Ji-Yuina and Zoro also held their breath at this time, hoping not to be found by Pudding. There was some misunderstanding between them. If Pudding found them, the misunderstanding would be even bigger. Pudding went from under the bed to behind the curtain. As soon as they checked, just when Kuina and Zoro thought that Pudding was looking for Jidong to breathe a sigh of relief, the next second Pudding walked to the front of the closet and opened his closet. Pulled the two of them out of the closet, and for a while, the three of them looked at each other with embarrassment in the air. Pudding stared at the two of them, gestured with his eyes and asked what the two of them were doing. The two pretended not to understand Pudding's eyes. You look at me, I look at you. Neither of them said anything. Pudding was a little uncomfortable seeing the two of them pretending to be stupid, so he asked, why are you two again? Are you two following me? Pudding was a little angry, and felt that the two of them were a bit haunted, but her question was not answered at all. Although Pudding felt that the two had no ill will towards her, Pudding didn't have the slightest affection for Kuina and Zoro in front of him about entering her room privately. Seeing that the two still didn't want to speak, Pudding asked, what are you two doing in my room? Kuina shook her head in denial, saying that she had done nothing, and Zoro shook her head as well. Pudding obviously didn't believe it. Then how did you guys show up here? We're here to find you, said Ji-Yuina. Find me? Aren't you already gone? Why are you back? How did you get back? How did you get to my room? What are you doing in my room? Pudding asked all questions at once impatiently, out. Kuina and Zoro didn't know how to explain to Pudding, and they were afraid that Pudding would lose control of his emotions when he heard the words, 3 eyes, so the two tacitly chose silence. Although they knew that silence was not a good solution, the two really didn't know what to do at this time, seeing them silent. 0. Ask for flowers. Pudding was in a hurry. After all, he didn't know how long they had been here. If he heard something he shouldn't have heard, he would be in big trouble. For fear of what they heard. So Pudding stopped beating around the bush, and didn't ask how the two of them appeared in her room, and asked directly if you two heard something. There was a hint of murder in his tone. Seems that as long as Kuina and Zoro nod and admit that they heard it, she will kill these two people. Ji-Yuina can only confess when Pudding looks like this. She and Zoro just want to inquire about the three-eyed clan. Zoro is afraid that Pudding will tell Ji-Yuina shot, and immediately blocked Ji-Yuina when she heard the three-eyed clan. Pudding's Pudding's murderous aura suddenly became stronger. At this time, Pudding felt that Ji-Yuna and Zoro were just here to ask for information and disturb her life. The two of them didn't pay attention to Ji-Yuna's statement that she was not discriminated against. Pudding only felt that Ji-Yuna and Zoro were two bad people. Chapter 184th Fight. What are you going to do? Your actions have seriously affected my life. Did Anjali instruct you to come? Pudding no longer believed every word Guina and Zoro said. We just wanted to know something about the three-eyed. No ill will towards you or the rest of the island. Ji-Yuna saw that Pudding's killing intent was violent, and she didn't want to play emotional cards with Pudding anymore. Chiba-san then directly confronted Pudding. What do you want to know? It's been so long, can you please stop disturbing my life? I don't remember anything about the three-eyed clan. Pudding doesn't want to entangle with Guina Zoro anymore. You lied, we have seen your diary, Zoro said loudly. He just wanted Pudding to tell the truth. He even peeked at my diary and said you weren't here to steal information. You bastards. What is the difference between you and robbers? Pudding was completely out of control when he heard this. Guina wanted to explain, but was interrupted mercilessly by Pudding. You are here to steal the information of my three-eyed clan. You just don't want my three-eyed clan to be better. I can see it. You are here to inquire about the information, and then report to Anjali. Come and arrest these two people. Stand up. Pudding's order to arrest Guina and Zoro is not what you think. Pudding, listen to my explanation. Ji-Yuna still wants to talk to Pudding calmly at this time. After all, it's their fault to peek at Pudding's diary, but Pudding obviously won't give her this chance. Pudding didn't want to hear them say a word. Shut up, I won't believe you anymore, you are two liars. After Pudding said this, people arrested Guina and Zoro. Calm down, you should know that they are not our opponents. Zoro also persuaded Pudding at this time, but a soldier came up and grabbed Guina and Zoro's hands. Everything you do on Cake Island can convict you. The crime of everything can kill you 100 times, and arresting you is a protection for the islanders. Zero. Pudding has made up his mind to kill Guina and Zoro caught up. She waved in motion for the soldiers to take the two of them down. In that case, don't blame me. Seeing that the persuasion was fruitless, Ji-Yuna could only break free from the shackles of Pudding's men, and started fighting with them with Zoro. Pudding immediately joined in upon seeing this, and the two sides fought hard. I saw Ji-Yuna shocked everyone around her, used a sword and a thought, and this move killed all Pudding's soldiers. Pudding also stopped fighting Zoro at this point. Don't you want to avenge your aunt? We can help you, Zoro also said at this time. You did hear it. Pudding was also shocked by Ji-Yuna's act of killing all soldiers 32 in one move. We can help you. You have also seen our strength. Zoro's strength is not in my words. If we have any problems with you in the residents of Cake Island militias, we have already started and it will not be like this. If you want to take revenge, we can help Ji-Yuna Shaoji to persuade him with emotion and reason. Chapter 185. Struggling to play a bitter drama. Pudding looked at Kuina dumbfounded. This Kuina killed all the soldiers with just one move. He knew that this opponent was very powerful. Therefore, Pudding has to take a long-term plan, and can't be rash. How unwise it is. In order to save his life, Pudding decided to use a bitter plan. Because no matter what method is used, as long as you can save your life, that is the right way. Only if you keep the green hills, you will not be afraid of running out of firewood. Only when you are alive will you have the opportunity to give in the future. Pudding watched Kuina walk towards him step by step, thinking hard in his heart how to get Ji-Yuna's sympathy and let him go. Just when Kuina was about to find the guy next to him, Pudding Vivi raised his head, and his two eyes filled with water and mist slowly looked towards Kuina. While looking at Kuina, he said pitifully to Kuina, I know the purpose of your coming to us. You want to open up the affairs of our three-eyed clan, but you may not know, I have nothing to do with the three principles. I don't know what, because since I was born, everyone said that I was an ominous person, and they were full of discrimination against me. My parents didn't like me, and even the children said that I was a monster when they saw me. I played together, avoiding me like the plague god. Even though I've never done anything to hurt people, people don't like me thinking I'm an outlier. No matter where I go, they're pointing at me behind my back. Even some kids don't understand when they're young what. Come to my side to see me. Their parents will grab them back as soon as possible, tell them to stay away from me. Pudding said as tears flowed down his eyes. He spoke very vividly and Kuina was there. He listened blankly, because he also felt that Pudding was really pitiful. Because the two of them are about the same age, he didn't expect Pudding's childhood to be like this. If he could, he wanted to help him and be friends with him, and Pudding watched Kuina listen carefully. Knowing that he had started listening, he had to go in. He had already started to sympathize with himself, so he continued to perform hard and continued to speak to Kuina. You have no idea how much I wish I could have friends, play with me, and share with me the fun things that a day brings to us. I wish I had relatives by my side to take care of me, to see if I had enough to eat, whether I was dressed warmly, or even to let my relatives praise me for growing taller or even better looking, but these have never happened before. Even the only aunt who was a little nicer to me asked me to grow my hair long and cover my third eye. He said that no one would see me like this. If they can't see what I look like, they won't say that I'm an unwanted person. In fact, my aunt doesn't understand my feelings at all. Because only he saw me as a person, and even he asked me to grow my hair to cover my eyes. He didn't know how painful my heart was at that time. While talking, Pudding was still crying with tears in his eyes, and this just made Kuina, who was not guarding him, feel more distressed for him, more sympathetic to him, and completely relaxed his guard against him. Chapter 186. Don't waste your time. And Kuina was completely addicted to what Pudding told about what happened around him. He didn't notice the calculated color in his eyes. Pudding saw that his trick was already working, so he told himself even more. This tragic life experience, he hopes to use this method to distract Kuina. So Pudding continued to tell Kuina about his miserable life experience and said, "But who wants to grow up like this? Let everyone say that he is a monster, that he is an ominous person. If God can give me a chance, let me. If I make a new choice, then I would rather not be a human and just be a small animal in this life, and I will not be as miserable as me. No one hurts, no one loves me, and even if I die one day, no one may know, even more. No one will shed a single tear for me." Pudding continues to cry and continue to sell miserable. Look at you, how good you are. You live a carefree life every day, and there are people who teach you skills. It's like me, that's all. People sneer at me. You have such a great ability to have killed them all, then also killed me. I really don't want to live. There is no one in this world worth my nostalgia. Even if I die today, no one will remember the existence of me and no one will shed a tear for me and sympathize with me. So please sympathize with me and kill me. I have really lived enough. No one in this world will care about me. So I beg you here, just kill me directly. I really don't want to continue to live like this. I hope I cannot be a human being in my next life. Even if I were to be reincarnated as a dog in my next life, I would feel very happy. At least others would say, "Hey, this dog is really cute." While talking, Pudding slowly approached Kuina step by step. He was getting closer and closer to Kuina, and Pudding was getting closer and closer to Kuina, the more he admired his ingenuity. Kuina was there listening intently to Pudding telling his story, watching Pudding leaning towards him step by step. They didn't think much about it, because he had missed Pudding just now, with such a calculating look in his eyes. Pudding looked at Kuina, not guarding himself at all, and he was like Kuina getting closer, and when he was still 3 or 4 steps away from Kuina, a knife fell on the back of his hand slowly. Pudding's grapefruit fell into Pudding's hands. Pudding gripped the knife fiercely, and slowly approached Kuina. And Kuina has been indulging in Pudding's miserable life experience, completely unaware of Pudding's movements behind his back, but at the same time, Zoro pressed Pudding from Pudding's back, pressed it to the ground, and said to Pudding, "You want to spare you once, but you still want to secretly attack Kuina. People like you really don't deserve sympathy. Quickly tell me what secrets your 3-eyed eyes have, and explain them all to me." Otherwise, I won't leave your life. And Pudding is very angry now, because he is about to succeed, and he will be able to kill Kuina soon. I didn't expect this. Zoro would actually go sideways. So Pudding said angrily to Zoro, "You don't have to worry about it. I won't say anything because I don't know anything." Chapter 187 Unbearable. At this moment, Ji-Yuyina was slowly awakening from the pudding she was addicted to, and he didn't expect this person to be so bad. Didn't expect that Pudding would actually make up his own life experience so miserably, trying to confuse himself so that he could relax on him, and be wary of him so he could assassinate him. He didn't expect that he would give his sympathy to such a wolf-hearted person. Ji-Yuyina felt very angrily and said to Pudding, "You are simply trying to achieve your goals, you are unscrupulous, and you have confounded me with such a miserable life experience, but you are still disappointed, all these little tricks were discovered by Zoro. It seems that you really don't want to live. This time, you can rest assured that I will fulfill you as U-920. Pudding listened to what Ji-Yuyina said. He didn't mean to be afraid at all, but raised his head with his eyes, cast Ji-Yuyina a glance, and said to Ji-Yuyina in a very mocking tone, "Only a fool like you will listen to the stories I make up and feel sad for me. How powerful do you think you are? You are not fooled by me, you are just a fool." Pudding despises Ji-Yuyina very much, because in this society you have to sympathize with others, so it is too simple to be Ji-Yuyina's head in a dangerous place. He is completely incomparable to himself. Yes, in his own eyes, Ji-Yuyina is a very stupid person. Pudding said to Zoro with great disdain, "Do you think you are very smart? Do you think that you have caught me, and you can get rid of me? Did you know about the three-eyed race from your mouth? Then I really want to be honored to tell you, then you are very wrong, because I don't know anything about the three-eyed clan at all, and I will disappoint you. It seems that you are going to be busy for nothing, because you will not know anything about the three-eyed clan, let alone I really don't know, even if I know, I will not tell yours." Pudding thought Zoro wouldn't treat himself like that. As long as he wanted to live, he didn't know anything, who could pry his mouth open. Now it's more patient than anyone else, and Zoro didn't take Pudding's words seriously at all, but increased the strength in his hand, and pressed Pudding to the ground even more desperately, using all his strength to let Pudding can't stand it. "Do you think it's up to you to say it now? There is no precedent for people who have passed through my Zoro's hands to explain things without opening their mouths. If you can become this precedent, I will be very grateful to your Zoro for saying these words to Pudding, and the other side is not showing any mercy." With his own strength, he pressed Pudding hard, making Pudding moan in pain. Pudding couldn't resist Zoro's strength, and explained to Zoro, I said, it's not that I don't explain to you, but because I haven't seen the father of the three-eyed clan since I was a child. Because as long as I can remember, as long as he comes back, my aunt will kick him out, so I have never seen him, and what I say is the truth. It's not that I don't want to explain, but that I really can't do anything. Chapter 188, Delete Memory. Pudding looked at Guina and Zoro's dubious expressions. He knew that Zoro also believed in him, so he was very aggrieved, and said to the two people that you all thought what I just said was just making up stories to win Ji-Yuyina's sympathy, so that you can escape from Ji-Yuyina's hands, but you don't know what I just said, it's actually true. Just because I have no friends and no place to complain about these things, so while I want Guina and pity me, I also want to treat him as my friend." Chatting with him, Pudding feels Zoro pressing his hand. His strength was already a little weaker, and he knew that his words had an effect on Zoro, so he performed even harder. Pudding continued to say to the two people, "You all think that I know the three-eyed clan very well, and I will definitely know about the three-eyed clan, but you are all wrong. I really have no status among the three-eyed clan people. They all looked down on me and thought I was a weird person. Even though my long hair covered my third eye, they still looked at me differently, and whenever I saw everyone this kind of, when looking at other people's eyes, my heart is also 10 points uncomfortable, but there is no way, I can't say anything. Because if I were a normal person, seeing me now, I also feel that they would be an anomaly, so I can't blame anyone, because they are all right. Pudding shed tears while talking. He felt the strength of Zoro's hand on him was almost gone, so he decided to extract the memories of the two people to see if the two of them knew about his plan. Pudding thought in his mind that he was actually doing it, and he slowly acted out his tragic life experience, while slowly invading Zoro and Guina's memories. Zoro and Guina here didn't even realize that the danger was approaching them. They were all immersed in the stories that Pudding told, and they didn't notice Pudding's actions at all. So Pudding successfully saw the memories of the two people easily. When he saw the memories of the two people and didn't know what his plan was, he still decided to delete all the memories of the two of them. 0. Ask for flowers. Make him forget what happened on this cake island, because the story he just told the two of them wasn't all made up, a good part of it was true. He doesn't need other people's sympathy for him, and he doesn't want others to know his background and let them pity him. Although he has physical defects, he will use his IQ to make up for all this. Pudding just wiped the memory of the two of them. They don't remember what happened here, nor the story Pudding just told them. When the two of them wake up, they will forget everything, and will not remember that he ever met Pudding, because the two just had compassion for Pudding, so Pudding decided not to kill them but just erase their memory. Let them forget what happened today, because he is afraid that Guina and Zoro will tell others about him. Chapter 189 I Wish You Peace. After Pudding removed Guina and Zoro's memories, he couldn't keep the two of them here, so he had to decide to lift the two of them onto the boat and let them sit on the boat and drift along the sea. Now that it has been decided, Pudding really did it, struggling to lift the two of them onto the boat, when it was determined that the two of them would not wake up for a while. Slowly pushed the boat into the sea, 763, and let the boat drift by itself. For the sake of your just letting me die, I will also let you live. I hope that the next time we meet again, it will not be an antagonistic relationship. If possible, I hope we can become friends. If it weren't for our own masters, I think we could really be good friends. I really want to be friends with you, because no one has ever felt so sympathetic to me. But for our own well-being, I hope we don't see each other again in the future, because our next meeting is destined to be hostile, so I wish you peace my friends, even if you won't remember me. Although Pudding, Guina and Solo only met in this short period of time, Pudding is very sure that the two of them are good people, but he doesn't have the honor to be good friends with them. Pudding has been standing on the shore, watching the ship slowly drifting farther and farther, getting smaller and smaller, just standing still on the shore watching the ship, until the last the ship is out of sight. Only then did Pudding withdraw his gaze and suppress all the thoughts in his heart. He couldn't let anyone know his true thoughts. After doing all this, Pudding slowly turned around to do what he wanted to do next. What to do? Although it was a thrilling day, he still liked the two people just now, at least the two of them are kind. I don't know how long the ship has been floating in the sea. Only then did Guyuna and Solo on the ship slowly wake up, rubbing their swollen heads, and slowly opened their eyes and looked here. Both of them were very surprised that they were on a boat, and what the hell was going on with the boat still floating at sea. The two of them seem to have some vague memories, and they can't remember them. They can't make sense. Guyuna looked at Zoro, Zoro looked at Guyuna, neither of them knew why they were on the boat, and they were both. What's the matter? I just feel a little headache and swollen, like fainting. The two decided not to think about those with different strokes, as long as they completed the task that Anjali gave them, because they still remembered the task that Anjali gave them to find the three-eyed clan, and they had already given the three-eyed race. Tell them the location of the clan and let them go to the three-eyed clan to check, so they put down their doubts and go to the three-eyed clan first. Because Anjali can entrust such an important task to the two of them to complete, it proves that Anjali trusts them very much, and that they cannot live up to Anjali's promise to them and properly complete the relationship between Anjali. The task given to them, so they did not hesitate to drive towards the direction Angry said to them. Chapter 190th Memory Fruit Ability. When Pudding packed up his mood and returned to his place, he shut himself in the room and recalled the memories of Guina and Solo. Although Pudding hoped to be friends with Guina and Sol, but they are destined to be opposites, no one can see Pudding's expression now, if anyone sees Pudding's expression. No one believes that this person is the one who just stood on the beach watching the boat carrying Guina and Zoro slowly drifting away, because this person is too cold. This person has not just stood on the beach just now. Any tinge of emotion that person shows. This person just feels treacherous and cunning because Pudding has packed his mood. 06. Even if he hopes he and Guina and Solo won't in the future meeting, it won't be a match, but it's just an idea, because the two of them are enemies. Therefore, he must suppress all his thoughts in his heart, so that no one will find out, and he will gradually forget it, and be the ruthless and cruel self that he used to be. Pudding was admiring it in his room. He just cut out Guina and Solo's memory. This is a note that was extracted from Pudding's deletion of Guina and Solo's memory. In this memory, Ainge is in it. List the tasks given to them, let them go to the Three-Eyed Clan, and the specific location of the March Clan. But unfortunately, all these memories were changed by Pudding. Because Pudding is a memory fruit person, he can change anyone's memory at will, delete other people's memories, or extract his memories. He just enjoys Guina and the memories left here, and even more the memory of giving them 2 hearts to change for myself. I feel interesting, and I don't know what will happen to the 2 of them afterward. But no matter what happened to the 2 of them, no matter what happened, it had nothing to do with him. Although he said that there were some who wanted to help them, he did not allow himself to betray his own people. So between the two, Xiao Ganbo chose his own Three-Eyed Clan and his clan without hesitation, and gave up the 2 people who had cared about, sympathized with and spared his life. Although he struggled a bit when making this decision, he didn't struggle for too long, thinking that he was still rational and would not give up his clan because of 2 people he had just met. Pudding just looked at Guina and Solo's memories over and over again, without being bored at all, so he looked at Pudding over and over again, and suddenly thought of Jiyuyina and the 2 people locked. I don't know how the 2 of them are now, have they woken up? But Pudding was not worried at all. Guina and Solo discovered that their memories had been tampered with, because they would not find any flaws, and Pudding still believed in his own abilities. Pudding thought, in any case, Guina and Solo will not find any flaws, they will do things according to the memory he programmed them. Even Pudding has some now, thinking about Anjali's expression when he finally found out that the 2 of them had been tampered with by him, and they were unfavorable to apprenticeship. Now he has some look forward to seeing Anjali's expression in the future. Chapter 191, Passionate Islanders. I don't know if Anjali will faint from anger when he knows all this. If that's the case, it's too funny. He is really proud of his ingenuity. What is Anjali? He has not been calculated by himself. He is a little excited now. I don't know when Guina and Zoro arrive at the destination he designed for them. What will it be like? Thinking about it is very exciting. He hopes to leave Guina and Zoro with an unforgettable experience in their lives, and hope they like the gift he gave them. And the ship that was drifting at sea over there was also drifting towards its destination bit by bit. This ship has been floating on the sea like this. It has been floating for a few days. Guina and Zoro knew about this ship. The ship is now getting closer and closer to the destination they are going to, and they are getting more and more excited because they are finally getting to the destination that Anjali gave them, and they hope to finish Angela earlier. List the tasks given to them, so that they can also go back to meet them sooner, because the memory of both people has been deleted by Pudding, and this memory has been added to them, so they are convinced that this is the task boat that Anjali gave them. In this way, they floated on the sea until the afternoon of the 3rd day, when the 2 of them had a little meaning to see the shore, because the 2 of them had vaguely seen the land on the bed. The boat floated for a long time, and the 2 gradually saw the shore. It seemed that there were still people playing and joking in the sea on the shore. The 2 of them secretly rejoiced. They finally reached their destination, and they could finally complete the task that Anjali gave them, because they had been drifting on the boat for 3 days, and they were really exhausted. They really wanted to finish it sooner. The task is good to go back and do business, so that you don't have to drift on the boat anymore. These 3 days are about to suffocate the 2 of them to death. The people who were playing on the shore were very surprised when they saw a boat approaching them in the distance, and they stood there motionless and watched the boat together. Soon the boat slowly got closer and closer to them, and when the boat just floated to people's side, people looked at the people on the boat very excitedly and said, "Welcome guests from afar, get off the ship quickly." While these people were talking to Guina and Zoro, they got on the boat and dragged them off the boat. Yuna and Zoro were very embarrassed to see that these people were so enthusiastic, so they let everyone drag them down, followed these people, and walked slowly to the shore. Yuna and Zoro were very polite. Said to the people, "Thank you everyone, we can go by ourselves." They said both, "Okay, okay," trying to slowly take their hands out of people's hands. And these people didn't seem to notice at all, and no one was willing to let go, so they enthusiastically dragged the two of them towards the shore. Yuna and Zoro were very helpless, so they could only follow them silently towards the shore, because they had tried several times, but they could not take their hands out of these people's hands. Chapter 192 Believe in Angeli. Just when these islanders had dragged Guina and Zoro to the shore and continued to walk to their island, Zoro really couldn't accept it because Zoro found out that these islanders were actually men, although they are all men, but they are all wearing women's clothes. Strictly speaking, it is a group of men dressed as men here. These people are simply too weird. They have never seen such a person. They are obviously men wearing women's clothes. They look so strange, but they are always so close to him and wandering around him. Guina also felt very puzzled and looked at these people. The information Angeli gave them was not wrong, but how could the destination he gave them be here? How can you meet some men who disguise themselves as women? Guina and Zoro have never met such a person in 930 before, so they felt it was incredible. They were all wondering what happened to the people here. Why are they so strange and strange? At the same time, the two of them also there are indeed some who can't accept it. These men are wearing women's clothes and changing in front of them, and they all speak like women. Although Guina said that she believed that the address that Angeli gave them was not wrong, but she was really puzzled. How could the destination he gave them be here? So Guina turned her head to look at Solo AGFC, long and asked Zoro doubtfully, "Could the address that Angeli gave us is wrong? Why do I feel so strange here?" After listening to Guina's words, Zoro replied to Guina and said, "Angeli has never made mistakes, so we must firmly believe that the address that Angeli gave us is not wrong, although Zoro's answer is so firm." According to Yuna's words, but he was actually muttering in his heart, "In which link did this go wrong?" And Guina replied, Zoro said, "Actually, I also believe Angeli, but didn't you find it? People on this island are so strange, it is inevitable that there will be no mistakes in any link." But this time Zoro didn't speak, just looked at Yuna with firm eyes, with his eyes that Yuna wanted to believe that Angeli would not make mistakes, and when Yuna here received Zoro when he looked at him, he also understood the message Zoro had sent to him, so he didn't continue talking, but these islanders didn't notice the eyes of the two people meeting, but stepped forward to pick them both up. Surrounded by them, it was as if they were afraid that they would go back on their regrets. It was not the same as what they saw. These islanders blocked Guina and Zoro from being surrounded by the heat, for fear that they would escape. Guina and Zoro also knew about these islanders. They are very enthusiastic. Although their clothes and living habits are very strange, they are not malicious. These Guina and Zoro know it. So Guina and Zoro no longer protested to the islanders, but let the islanders surround the two of them. Neither of them said anything, but confronted the islanders, smiling enthusiastically. The islanders were very happy to see that the two of them didn't want to leave. They embraced the two of them and walked slowly towards their island with the two of them. Chapter 193 Can't Escape. Guina and Zoro also felt very helpless, because these unlucky people are very enthusiastic, but for the two of them, watching a large group of men wearing women's clothes dangling in front of their eyes is really true. Difficult to accept. But what's even more helpless is that even if they can't accept the two of them, they can only follow the men in women's clothes to the island. They walked from the shore to their island, and they walked for a long time before they came to their island. These islanders came to their island with great enthusiasm, and immediately invited them to their island. They went to the place where they usually eat and prepared a lot of delicious food for them, and motioned them to eat more, but Guina and Zoro didn't have the heart to eat these things, because the two of them were awkward themselves. The aspect is that they want to complete the task that Anjali gave them as soon as possible. So Ji Yuyina said to the Taoists, "Thank you Otsuka for your hospitality, but the two of us have something to do here. I have a question I want to ask everyone, and I hope everyone can help." Yina's questions, and they were all waiting for Ji Yuyina to ask them questions. The people said, "Excuse me, do you know where the Three-Eyed Clan is?" When the islanders heard Guina's question, they all felt that there was something unclear. So what is the Three-Eyed Tribe? They haven't heard it. Tilda said it. So these she-males living on the island didn't know how to answer Guyana's question, so someone picked up a pen and drew an eye on their forehead. When Zoro saw the actions of these islanders, he realized that this time, it might really be that the information that Anjali gave them was wrong. Otherwise, how could these islanders make such an unusual behavior? Zoro has recognized the seriousness of the problem, so he drew his arrows and said to the islanders, "I don't care who you are, stay away from me now, and now I order you to immediately take us off this island." 0. Ask for flowers _. At that time, these she-males, who would not back down, attacked Zoro and Guyana one after another. The moves they used were also more feminine, and they were all common moves by girls, such as Girl Fist and Love Cut. Although their moves are relatively skilled, after all, they are some she-males, and their skills are not as good as Zoro's. Although Zoro and Guina are very powerful, there are many people who can't stand these she-males. As the saying goes, a good tiger can't stand a pack of wolves. Zoro and Ji Yuyina fought a chaotic battle with the she-males. Although Zoro and Ji Yuyina didn't suffer, they fought very hard. Because after all, there are she-males here, and there are many she-males in the world, so Zoro and Ji Yuyina can't take too much advantage, but neither of them can escape. Chapter 194. Cherry Blossoms Falling and 100 Flowers Blowing. Of the she-males are still very powerful. Guina and Zoro are entangled with the she-males like this, and they have never been able to decide the winner, but no one wants to quit this battle. Just in the chaotic battle that the two sides are inseparable, Zoro and Ji Yuyina are holding a gap. Zoro said to Ji Yuyina, "It seems that the people here have been hurt by these she-males, we be sure to speed up the fight to deal with them." 3. As soon as possible to check where the Three-Eyed Clan went, whether they were really hurt by these she-males. If they hurt the Three-Eyed Clan, then we must not let them go. Ji Yuyina said to Zoro, "The ability of the Three-Eyed Clan should not be weak. How can they be bullied by these she-males? And even their territory is occupied by these she-males, which is simply illogical. Matter." Zoro said to Ji Yuyina seriously, "No matter what happened, now we don't know. Our first task now is to solve these she-males first, and then find out the Three-Eyed people. Where did they all go?" Ji Yuyina knew that what the dragon said was correct, but after all, these she-males have a lot of personnel and it is impossible for the two of them to win as soon as possible. But if these she-males are not resolved, they will have no way of knowing the whereabouts of the Three-Eyed Clan, and they will not be able to complete what Anjali explained to them. If they can't complete it, how should they explain it to Anjali? It seems that if you want to deal with these she-males, you can't win by fighting them with this kind of brute force. They still need to rely on wisdom to win these she-males. So the two of them have used many methods, but they have not been able to win these she-males. They look harmless, but they are still very smart. Guina and Zoro and these she-males are fighting hard here. No one has won anyone, but Zoro and Guina have no intention of giving up because Guyana and Zoro believe that it was these she-males who hurt the talents of the Three-Eyed Clan and occupied the territory of the Three-Eyed Clan, and they must destroy these she-males for the Three-Eyed Clan. After helping the Three-Eyed people eliminate these she-males, they will go to find the Three-Eyed people and continue to live on this island. These she-males, Guina and Zoro have fought together for a long time, and they have been fighting for a long time. There is no way to tell the winner, so Zoro is a little anxious. If they continue to entangle like this, then they will waste a lot of time on these she-males. They need to end this battle as soon as possible, so as to find Three Eyes, complete the task that Anjali gave them as soon as possible. So Zoro shouted to Ji Yuyina, "Ji Yuyina, now you withdraw immediately and stand behind me. Zoro's eyes flashed with coldness. Zoro, who was so serious, without Sibo's hesitation, she immediately listened to Zoro's words, fought high, and stood behind Zoro. Zoro raised his arrows at the she-males and shouted, "Since you have been clinging to us here, let you try my new move, Sakura 23 Falls, 100 Flowers Blows, to see how long you can hold on." All the demons saw the pitch-black cherry blossoms containing sword energy, attacking their position. The demons were stunned, did not respond, and stood there in a daze. The explosions and people's screams were heard in an instant, but Guina and Zoro did not sympathize with them, but stood quietly on the side, watching what happened here. Chapter 195 The Mystery of She-Males. At this time, on the outskirts of She-Male Island, Zoro and Kuina are back-to-back facing strange attacks from the she-males. Zoro said, "This attack is really weird. Kuina, be careful." Kuina was already furious. "I didn't expect that there were males and females on this island," and she exclaimed, "Perverted," waving the saber in his hand and slashing at the oncoming she-male. "It's really strange that the fighting technique of the she-male is really strange. Zoro and Kuina has never encountered such an attack before." Girl punch, love cut, model legs. The she-males punched and kicked and used weird attacks. Zoro didn't dare to be careless, and immediately used swordsmanship 06. A half-circle of lingering sword chi emanated from Zoro's black knife, and the sword chi slashed exactly on the body of the monster. Dong! The she-male can't help but snort when attacked, with a painful expression on his face, but then his face changed immediately, and he said solemnly, "It's okay." Zoro couldn't help but be surprised when he saw that his sword energy didn't hurt the demon at all. Kuina on the side had no time to take care of Zoro behind him at this time, and when she heard the strange voice of the she-male, she shuddered in her heart. "You perverts, kill this girl. Glutton swallow the sky." Kuina made a sword move, and saw that the blade was swallowing the white breath, like a gluttonous meal. In an instant, a strong shock wave was ejected from the sword and rushed towards the human monster with lightning speed. The she-males felt the vibrations in the air, but there was no fear in their eyes. They stood on the spot like guardian messengers, facing Kuina's shock wave. Wherever the shock wave hit, there were gusts of wind, and the sand on the beach seemed to form. The sandstorm blocked everyone's sight. Zoro saw such a battle, and couldn't help but look back, thinking that the she-males couldn't resist this move. After a while, the beach cleared up again, and their eyes were released. They saw that there were still figures standing opposite Kuina. Zoro and Kuina Dingqing saw that Kuina blushed and turned around, shouting that the perverted Zoro was about to drop his chin. The she-male is tyrannical. Kuina's shock wave still hasn't hurt in the slightest, but the maid costumes, royal sister costumes, lowly costumes, etc. on the she-male still can't stand the impact of the shock wave, and they burst open one after another. The she-males don't seem to have the shame of ordinary people, and they also shouted, "The secret art of she-males, the king's new clothes," with a proud expression on their faces. Vomit, vomit, vomit. Kuina heard the sound and made a vomit gesture. Zoro also said angrily, "I cut you." At this time, the she-males of Chiguo were like magic, and immediately took out 600 brand new clothes and put on them one after another, saying, "The secret technique of she-males to cross-dressing." After speaking, the surrounding she-males attacked immediately. At this time, Kuina seemed to be a little weak, and accidentally injured her right leg by the love cut of a she-male. Zoro stepped forward quickly and knocked the monster away. Shouting is not good. I can only see the time and escape, and the overwhelming she-males surrounded the two of them. Zoro originally wanted to use the sword energy to open a breakthrough, and rushed out with Kuina, but whenever a breakthrough was opened and rushed over, the she-male next to him would immediately fill the position, and Zoro could only return to the original flavor. Watching the she-males approaching step by step, the situation is getting worse and worse. Chapter 196 I Don't Want to Be a She-Male. Zoro carried Kuina on his back and used Moon Step to go into the air. Unexpectedly, 2 or 3 celebs' legs attacked Zoro's head in a slashing trend. Zoro could only take out his saber to defend against the attack, but the method of breaking through from the air also failed. Zoro has a bitter look on his face. He can't think of any way. He can only watch the shemale approaching Zoro step by step. Use that. At this time, Kuina's expression was a little better, and it seemed that he had recovered from the soul attack of the shemales. Zoro knew what he was talking about, and said with a heavy expression, "The probability of that is not very high, and there may be a backlash." The shemales watched the two people in the center whispering and said loudly, "I give you 2 choices, one is to stay and be our partner, and the other is to die." Kuina said, "Is there any other choice?" Zoro heard the choice given by the shemales at this time, and actually wanted them to be shemales. "Isn't this worse than death?" Immediately said, "Just use that. Let's start. I don't want to be a shemale." The shemale heard Zoro's talk, and all kinds of strange shemale attacks all attacked Zoro and Kuina back to back at this time, holding a sword in one hand, and shouting loudly, "Baiyun 100 turns and thousands of rounds." Zoro and Kuina wielded their single swords at the same time, their bodies rotated clockwise, and the situation changed suddenly, and a huge tornado formed on the beach. The oncoming shemales couldn't stand the gravitational force of the tornado, and they were all swept up into the sky, but this is the case, there were no scars on the surface of the shemales. The shemale lying on the ground cried out in his heart, but when he saw that there was no harm to his body, he was shocked again. Zoro immediately carried Kuina and ran to the jungle in the center of the island. Slowly, the backs of the two disappeared into the jungle. At this time, the shemales on the beach woke up and saw the missing Zoro. They searched everywhere and saw the footprints left on the beach. They were very angry. A group of monsters began to hunt down the game of 2 people. The 2 of Zoro entered the jungle, thinking that they can rest for a while, and immediately found a hidden place and put Kuina on the ground. Zoro was about to bandage Kuina's injury when he heard a strange scream from behind and finally found you. Zoro didn't bother to look back, and immediately carried Kuina on his back and ran away. "Don't go, handsome brother. We have no malice, don't run away." Zoro shuddered, thinking these people are coming for me. No, no, no. Zoro dismissed the idea at the thought of disgusting shemales. The shemales quickly surrounded Zoro and the two with their tyrannical bodies. The copyright of the novel resource belongs to the original author. The text is only for personal study and trial reading. Please delete it within 24 hours after downloading. Please support subscribing to Genuine Novels and refuse piracy. This novel was first published by Dragon. Feilu's Novel Internal Group 1,142,529,731. Feilu's Novel Internal Group 2,929,082,961. More wonderful Feilu novels are in the hands of the group owner. Welcome to the group. I hope you don't get deceived by those scammers. Kuina said. Zoro, if you want to stop using the combined attack, Zoro said. It will take a few more minutes, the side effect of the combined attack is too great. I don't know how to hear Zoro's name among the shemales, and immediately spread the word to the surrounding shemales. Zoro with wide eyes. Zoro was staring at the heart and cursed. What to see? Depend on. There was a burst of clamor and discussion in the group of shemales. Zoro sauce is so good. I'm going to give Zoro a monkey. Hearing these voices, Zoro got goosebumps all over his body, and even some shemales took out their maid clothes, and the stockings said they would put them on for Zoro. Chapter 197 leads away. The outskirts of the jungle, a large group of shemales rushed towards Zoro with strange costumes. Zoro's face was ashen at this time, and his mobile phone was flashing with black sword energy, but the effect was very small. It seems that only a combined attack can be used. Aina, can you cooperate? Zoro turned his head and asked if he was worried about Kuina's injury. Fine, and it's the only way to go now. Kuina said. After saying that, the two continued to use the combined attack move just now to stun the rushing shemale. After that, Kuina couldn't stand and fell to the ground. Fortunately, Zoro supported her in time and carried her to the depths of the jungle. Finding a hidden cave, Zoro repeatedly confirmed that there were no she-males tracking around, and arranged some branches at the door. Then he calmed down and bandaged Kuina 993's wound. At this time, Kuina's face was a little pale, and it should be due to excessive blood loss. This is the case with 2 combined fencing strokes. Zoro, these she-males are so strong, we took 2 hits to knock them out. Kuina said weakly. Zoro was also in a turmoil at this time. He originally came here to find the Three-Eyed Clan according to the master's instructions. He didn't expect to encounter these strange she-males. His strength is still so tyrannical. Thinking of these is really a headache. Zoro looked at the injured Kuina and thought that he must not use the combined attack anymore, otherwise Kuina's injury will get worse. Seeing Zoro frowning, Kuina also understood what he was thinking. He was injured, and Zoro would only be a burden to bring him. Zoro, why don't you go first? The most important thing is to complete the task of the master. Kuina finally made up her mind, saying. Zoro was racking his brains trying to figure out a way, when he heard what Kuina said. A look of anger appeared on his face, and said. Kuina, what did you say? Do you want me to be a bastard for saying such a bastard? Don't wait for Kuina to retort. He continued. Don't worry, I will definitely take you out. Kuina seems to have made up her mind, and there is a trace of anger on her face, and said, Zoro, stop being self-willed, you also know how powerful the AGEF is outside. You will only kill me when you take me, go away. I'm going to lure them away. Zoro listened to it, expressed his intentions, and firmly disagreed with Kuina's actions. Kuina couldn't, so he had to stop talking, but from time to time he would bring up his thoughts again. Zoro is seriously thinking about his memories at this time. Master shouldn't lie to me, since it is said that this is the island of the Three-Eyed Clan, it must be. If there is such a powerful she-male clan, the master will definitely tell us in advance. Difficult to hit us remember wrong. But every time I want to go to the farther memories, my head hurts. But at this time things have happened, the important thing is to get out of here as soon as possible. Kuina, you'll stay here later, I'll go out and lure them away. No, you alone are not their opponent. Kuina shouted stop when she heard Zoro say such things. Zoro said with a confident smile at this time, it's okay. I will definitely come back. We still need the master to go on a new journey. Seeing such a confident appearance, Kuina felt that Zoro was so handsome today. Chapter 198 Accidental Discovery. You are here, stay in this tree hole, don't run around, do you hear? Zoro touched Kuina's head. Kuina nodded obediently, and smiled lightly. Zoro turned around when Kuina suddenly stood up and asked in a panic, are you looking for a ladyboy? Zoro nodded and said, yes, it's too dangerous, so you can't go, just wait for me here, don't run around, or we won't be able to find it by then, did you hear me? Like an obedient and sensible child, Kuina nodded and said, then I'll be here waiting for you to come back, don't forget me, I've always been here. After that, Gu-Yina squatted down. Zoro smiled, looked around vigilantly, and found that nothing was out of the ordinary. So he turned around and left with confidence. Zoro looked left and right along the way. Afraid of missing the she-male, Zoro's footsteps were very soft. All the trees in this forest are very similar, making Zoro, who has always been very sensitive in direction, feel a little dizzy. Zoro realized that something was wrong, so he picked up a stone from the ground and marked it on the tree to give himself a hint. This is the best way so far. At this time, the wind was blowing, giving people an uncomfortable feeling of chills behind the back. Zoro's footsteps were slower, and there was almost no sound, like a bird's. Pump, chirp. Just when Zoro was very scared, a nest of black crows not far away suddenly flew up. It must have been frightened by something. Zoro looked around vigilantly. Zoro didn't dare to stop because he didn't know where this place was or was it safe. Zoro's forehead was full of dense cold sweat. Zoro kept shivering but whether he was still walking forward in fear, Sunlong knew in his heart that he could never die alone in this place, and he also promised Kuina to go back to find her. Zoro kept swallowing. The last rays of the sun scattered on the ground, giving this forest an even more unpredictable sense of mystery. Zoro seemed to be exploring, panting heavily. Zoro kept probing the road ahead, and he didn't find any monsters along the way. Zoro became curious. Zero. Ask for flowers. Zero. Are they all hiding? It's not reasonable at all. Zoro thought in his heart. Walking, Zoro was not so afraid anymore. After all, the line of Zoro's spirit was already taught. If you continue like this, you may not be able to hold on. Zoro raised his head suddenly, which made Zoro exclaim involuntarily. Zoro saw a pink roof. Zoro continued to walk inside, looked at the surrounding environment. Nothing happened. Zoro walked inside carefully, and more nearly. Zoro saw the window of the Sunshine Rainbow Little White Horse. Zoro couldn't help raising the corner of his mouth. Pink decoration. There are colorful rainbow shapes on the windows. What is amazing is that from a distance, the whole castle shape is a beautiful carousel shape. Zoro keeps approaching, and there are lovely hangings on the windows. The bed bell of the cloudy fluorescent lights, from a distance, can vaguely see the lavender dream catcher. Zoro walked very slowly. Chapter 199 is expected. Zoro stopped, looking at the castle in front of him. After pondering for a while, I found a good position and planned to stay here and wait for the moon to come out. I didn't see a ladyboy along the way. Could they all be invisible? It's impossible. Could it be in this castle? Zoro's heart is getting bigger and bigger. Zoro's eyes have not left the castle for a moment. He is staring at the city. Every move in the 473 castle, the moon scatters on the land, adding a little desolation to the forest. Bleak feeling. Kagaza. The ragged footsteps attracted Zoro's attention. Zoro followed the direction and looked over, and to Zoro's surprise, this place was indeed a gathering area for she-males. The she-males were entering the castle carefully and regularly. Zoro looked around, and ran to a blind spot. The sound of the leaves rubbing attracted the attention of the she-male door. Zoro held his breath and controlled his breath. Zoro looked around secretly, and it was safe again. The personnel went in according to certain rules. Zoro looked at the cold wall and looked at the colorful scene inside. Zoro took a peek at it, and a she-male just turned around and said that it was too late. Time is fast, but fortunately Zoro's response is fast, otherwise he will be discovered. The wind blew the leaves and made a rustling sound. Zoro took advantage of this sound and moved his position quickly. The funny thing was that there was only a breeze, and the rustling sound of the leaves soon disappeared. Zoro's body froze and looked at the she-male embarrassedly. Zoro didn't give up and entered the castle very quickly. Zoro admired the luxury of the castle in his heart and ran in fear. Zoro was very clear in his heart that there was no distinction between one and the other. If you win, this thing can't be solved. The she-male quickly set up the battle. Zoro smiled disdainfully, and said, "It seems that it is time to show you some color. After looking for you for so long, there must be a result." That the she-male rushed over like water. Zoro he smiled contemptuously and said, "Just you underestimate me too much, let's have sex together." Zoro shouted loudly, "Yingluo Beibwewa." I saw that all the small objects around were biased towards the she-male. The face of the she-male door became hideous and ugly, and it was almost impossible to tell what it looked like. A she-male struggled to come to Zoro. Both sides took a few steps back. The difference was that Zoro was still standing, while the group of she-males had already fallen to the ground. Zoro smiled smugly. And the she-males on the ground seemed to be okay. All the she-males stood up again, and Zoro smiled helplessly and said, "Sure enough, your perseverance is really strong. Isn't it enough? You must lie on the ground and crawl, can't get up. Well, I'll satisfy you." Zoro looked at the dark clouds outside, hooked his lips, and said, "If you want to fight, you will come out, let alone you, I will feel bad for you. There is such a girlish heart." She-males followed Zoro out. Zoro stepped back very fast, suddenly banged, and took out a sword. With a beautiful posture, the leaves were still floating around, and in a blink of an eye, they turned into scum. Chapter 200 Colored Fireworks. Zoro looked at them like this, and knew what was going on in his heart, so he just continued to fight them with his own moves. Soon, the group of she-males probably thought that Zoro was alone and was not a threat, so they just said, "What's the matter? If you continue like this, we will not let you go." Hearing this, Zoro seemed particularly dismissive. He really didn't know what this group of people thought. As Angeli's apprentice, although he didn't say anything about important things, it was more than enough to deal with them. When he said this, Zoro just suddenly said, "If you think you can, then come and try." "Oh 6 This sentence is said, is it not a naked provocation? How can you let Zoro say this?" Sashi gets up directly. Seeing such a situation, Zoro actually knew what was going on in his heart. Their combat effectiveness was not that strong. Sure enough, after a few rounds, Zoro felt that the opposite ladyboy felt that he couldn't hold on, so he sighed helplessly and said, "If I knew this, why start?" The she-male on the opposite side also seems to know about this situation, but they just come together, although they can't beat Zoro, but in this case, they also know what's going on for a while. Zoro feels a little embarrassed. In this case, even if he can't lose, it will be short. In time, there is still no way to escape. But if it goes on like this, although this group of she-males does not seem to be very powerful, Zoro knows that there are still a lot of them. At this moment, a particularly gorgeous rainbow suddenly appeared in the sky, and no one else knew what was going on. They are all looking at the rainbow in the sky together. Seeing that the she-male here suddenly stopped his movements, Zoro was also curious and also looked at the rainbow in the sky. For a time, Zoro felt curious, what the hell was going on? At this moment all the she-males knelt down together, moved in the direction of the rainbow, and said loudly, "Lord Ivankov." What the hell is going on here? Zoro suddenly seemed to have no idea what was going on, but he looked carefully, and there seemed to be nothing there, saying it was a rainbow, but it wasn't. Because although his colors are also colorful, but slowly, he found that all his colors are fleeting. To be honest, he thinks more about fireworks. Zoro felt like he couldn't understand it for a while, and there are still people who like this kind of thing. In all cases, looking at Zoro, I don't know what's going on. What the hell is going on? This Ivankov, who the hell is just looking at the fireworks in the distance? I have to say, it's really beautiful. Here, Zoro just stared at the she-male and said, "Lord Ivankov." As he walked in the direction of the colorful fireworks, Zoro was even more surprised when he saw this. He didn't know whether he continued, or whether he what else. Chapter 201 Go Home. Seeing them all leave, Zoro suddenly didn't know what to do. I just feel that I have to hurry up with them, otherwise there will be other problems at that time. When he thought of this, Zoro couldn't control it too much. He just said, "Well, let's hurry up and catch up." But it was developing slowly, but he couldn't keep up, so he just said, "Oh, but," Zoro seems to know something suddenly, and feels that since he can't catch up now, he should forget it, and he should go back. Look, what the hell is going on? As a result, when I just walked out to the door, I saw a woman waiting for me at the door. Zoro felt curious, so he hurried over, only to see that this person was Kuina. Zoro felt curious and hurriedly asked, "What are you doing here? Why are you hurrying? You should go back quickly." After finishing speaking, Kuina looked at Zoro and didn't know what to say, so she just asked, "What's going on there? Why did you suddenly come back to Kuina's question?" So Zoro didn't know what to say. I just explained the situation I was facing, so Kuina didn't know what to say. Just looking at Zoro not knowing, what the hell is going on? Watching Kuina ask himself like this, Zoro doesn't know how to let things go on and on. Zoro is here, looking at Kuina, but doesn't know what to say for a while. Just he said, "It's okay, let's go back and have a look first, take a look at the situation, and then discuss what's going on." After finishing speaking, Kuina looked at them eagerly, leaving Zoro not knowing what to say for a while. But now, with the situation of the group of she-males, Zoro can only know something from Kuina if he wants to know something. Two of them didn't say anything, they just said, "That what, let's go back, and then let's talk about the rest, and see what happened to the group of she-males." Zoro thought of this and thought it was the same, but since Kuina could think of this, that's it. The two walked forward silently, no one said anything. Suddenly, after Zoro heard this, he still felt embarrassed about this situation. So just say, "That what, you have nothing to do, I just let you back first." Having said that, Kuina's face also seemed to have a different color, and she just said, "Well, I have nothing to do, you let me come back, I must be very safe." Zoro didn't understand if there was any other meaning in this sentence, but just nodded relievedly, and said, "Okay, since there is nothing else Jiao, I'm relieved." When it came to this, Zoro just felt that the matter of this she-male did not seem to be as simple as he thought. So he asked Kuina and said, "How much do you know about she-males?" What? After hearing this, Kuina felt a little unhappy in her heart. This Zoro, how could she ask herself if she has nothing else to do except this she-male, and what did she think? Chapter 202 Physical Training. When can we reach land? Shirahoshi said yearningly. He has been living in the ocean, and he has only been able to land on land a few times in his memory, but he has to return to the sea again in a short time. Longing for the joy of land, Anjali said seriously, forgetting to look ahead, and was about to land on land. The speed was very fast, and the group reached the land. Shirahoshi looked at the people walking on the ground with a look of longing in his eyes. At the same time, she was also a little distressed. She couldn't walk on the ground at will, because she herself had no legs. Anjali noticed her sad eyes at a glance, as if she could see through her soul. "Let you ride this dragon." Very generous, directly gave up his car to the white 017 star. With the dragon, the travel of playing cards will be more convenient, and the problem of no legs can also be solved. "Thank you, Master," Shirahoshi said sincerely. At the beginning, he was a teacher of Anjali, but he just wanted Anjali to protect Mermaid Island. Shirahoshi now seems to be able to learn more useful skills from Master Anjali. It's okay to be a good disciple, follow the teacher and study hard. Anjali Vivi Isho. Arriving on the land and simply settling in, Anjali handed Shirahoshi into Nami's hands. "From tomorrow onwards, you will teach her basic training well," said Agdi to Nami. "Then it is also better for me. The master leads the door, and the cultivation depends on the individual. Whether you can learn it or not depends on yourself." Then he nodded slightly and looked at the little sister Shirahoshi. "I will definitely teach you well, thank you, sister, and I will also study hard." Shirahoshi said seriously, "They have already arrived on the land, naturally it is the cost of learning, only able to go back." "Very good, just let me see your next transformation." Banju said word by word, but when the time came, he wanted to check. "Little junior sister, come with me and start physical training today." Nami took Shirahoshi to a sandy place. Shirahoshi looked at this piece of sand and didn't understand what senior sister meant or what she wanted to do. Just crawled out of the sand. Namibo gave the order without hesitation. "The little teacher has no legs, it's a little difficult to do physical training, but it's a human effort, nothing can't be successful, it just depends on whether you pay enough." "Senior sister, such a big piece of sand, I may faint if I can't climb over it." Shirahoshi showed a slightly embarrassed look on his face. This is just the look of embarrassment on Mermaid Island. Under Nami's stern gaze, he slowly got off the dragon and slowly crawled in the sand. The sand on her body is not a good feeling. For her, Shirahoshi gritted her teeth and finally wanted to give up, but the encouragement was ringing in her ear. "Little junior sister. Climbing for a while will come to the end, you are sure to give up now. If you work harder, you will be fine. You must believe that you will be able to climb the difficulties." Nami said again, cheering up. Yes, just a simple sentence, but it gave Shirahoshi a lot of courage. Sweating profusely under the scorching sun, and finally climbed over the sand. Up from the ground, Shirahoshi was panting, lying on the dragon's body, without any strength. The physical training of the day is here for the time being and will continue tomorrow, Nami said with a smile, touching Shirahoshi's head as a sign of encouragement before leaving. Chapter 203 Training is very tiring. Early the next morning, Shirahoshi had just finished breakfast and was about to go to the training ground when he saw Nami walking towards him. Go there an hour earlier every day, Nami said seriously. Punctuality is very important, as if it's a little loose today. But she will teach her sister well in a while. Today, Nami played a new trick again and took people to the mountains and forests. Today, run 30 laps around here. Shirahoshi widened his eyes and stared at the huge forest. If he had finished running all of them, he probably wouldn't have finished running until it was dark. Sister, this is too embarrassing. Shirahoshi bit his lip and said helplessly, his eyes that were originally bright are now full of darkness. This is just the simplest physical training, hurry up, Nami said urgingly, watching leisurely beside her. Shirahoshi cheered himself up in his heart, crawled round and round, sweating profusely, and finally finished his sister, can we rest today? Shirahoshi said expectantly, this physical training is too tortured every day. You see how much slower you are, and you didn't complete it at all. Nami said solemnly, if she worked hard, she would not have lingered until this point. Shirahoshi heard this, full of grievances, this is not the ocean, I can't swim as I want. Looking at the poor Shirahoshi, Nami also sighed faintly, yes, this is really not the ocean, even on land, you should work harder. I want to work hard, but I don't even have legs. How can I be better than others? I was already weak on them. Shirahoshi said sadly, now beginning to wonder why he came to land in the first place. Why do I want to be a teacher? I feel a little regretful in my heart, but all this can't go back. Looking at her decadent appearance, Nami also knew that Shirahoshi is now in a state of wanting to give up. Are you willing to admit defeat? Would you like to be lower than others? Nami asked 2 questions in a row and got Shirahoshi shaking his head. Very good, if you don't want to, then you will become stronger and more powerful than others. Nami said earnestly. Only by putting in 10 times more effort than others, 1,000 times the effort, and being above others' heads, can you see further places. This world is originally a world of fists. If you have no strength, you will be trampled on by others sooner or later. 0. Ask for flowers. 0. You must know that although you have no legs on land, you can be more powerful than those who have legs. As long as you train your physical fitness according to what I said, you will be successful one day. Nami said seriously, she was naturally concerned about junior sister in her heart. But now the little junior sister is like a confused lamb, and she needs her as a beacon to lead the way. I get it, thank you for telling me so much. Shirahoshi nodded earnestly, and those big watery eyes were full of hope again. It is no longer trapped in despair and crushed by the heavy physical training, but brave and confident. I'm sure you can. Nami patted Shirahoshi on the shoulder. Shirahoshi, who has been enlightened, also works harder than others in training, and is serious about not wanting to be lazy and give up. Nami sees everything Shirahoshi has done, and her heart is full of comfort. It seems that the younger sister is working harder and harder, and her physical fitness can be increased recently. Nami Vivi. Lol, it's just relatively simple training. Chapter 204 Looking for Weapons. Has been watching a lot in the dark these days. Shirahoshi is earnestly doing physical training without any slack thoughts. It seems that it is time to choose a weapon for her. Anjali touched his chin and said thoughtfully. At present, Tuur is still in physical training and has not trained any moves. Once he enters, he will need a handy weapon. But he didn't have many weapons. Anjali browsed the Wu in the 703 inches system and saw several different ones. There were ice blue water swords inlaid with many orbs and diamonds, and mysterious pattern. It's too flashy to do much damage at all. Angry shook his head and rejected this rather good-looking sword and looked at a lot of weapons, none of which made him happy. These weapons are too dark and too heavy, and they are not suitable for this disciple of Mermaid Island. Anglo lined up with many swords, and after reading all of them, he shook his head and sighed, I don't know when I will find it. If it is suitable for a young apprentice, it is better to wait and see. I am still in physical training recently, so I am not in a hurry for the time being. I will find a weapon for her. Anjali said helplessly. Let's see how the physical training goes. Anjali muttered and came to the training ground. I saw that under the scorching sun, the little apprentice gritted his teeth and insisted, all the fine sweat on his forehead. Nami just turned around and saw it. Her master hid in the dark and walked to the side of the master. Shirahoshi been training recently? Anjali asked earnestly. Nami nodded. The little junior sister worked very hard after her suggestion that day, but she still had some thoughts of being lazy, but it was completely gone. Train well, and don't show mercy. Now showing mercy is a threat to her life. Anjali left only this sentence after reading it. The strength is not enough, it is a threat to life. The system did suddenly announce a message, training alien apprentices to Marine Vice Admiral level. As soon as the news came out, Anjali was a little surprised. The news was released quickly. Anjali was thinking in his heart, how to quickly improve the strength of his alien apprentices and reach the Marine Vice Admiral level 0. It seems that he has to go back and train them well. Good day. When Anjali thought of his apprentice, his brain still ached. It seems that their good days will disappear from today. The alien apprentices in the distance didn't know what they were going to face in the future, and several people even sneezed. Why do I feel as though someone is scolding me? A certain apprentice sneezed, and the tiger body was shocked and had a bad premonition. The person next to him slapped him on the shoulder. I think you're thinking too much, so you might have a bad premonition. Could it be that the master is going to come back? A certain apprentice can only think of the place 31. The master has another junior sister who is training well, so there shouldn't be any free time during this time. Said nonchalantly. It seems that I have been thinking too much recently. Let's go and continue to go out for a drink. A certain apprentice who had thought about everything said casually, but he didn't know how dark his future days were. Go on, don't think about it all day. The two looked at Isho and happily went out to have fun. Chapter 205 Improve Strength. Anjali continued to look down and saw the reward of the task. It is a silver-white sword with easy-to-understand patterns engraved on it, with a sense of mystery, and the tip of the sword is very sharp. There is an explanation next to this sword. The sword of the Sea King is light and suitable for female practitioners, and its lethality is very large. But just 3 simple sentences made it sad. Anjali wanted to find the sword for Shirahoshi. I really didn't expect that there is no place to find the bloody shoes, and it takes no effort to get them. Anjali said with emotion. He was in a hurry for the weapon that was in hand, but he didn't expect to send a pillow to Sleepy, but now the system has released this task. However, this prize is very suitable for Shirahoshi. Can even say that this sword was made for Shirahoshi, and it is really 06 that fits her current situation. I just gave this task to the next step. Since I am going to leave now, I have to tell Nami when I go out. He returned to the training ground again, but this time, he didn't come from secretly and quietly, but was above board. Even Shirahoshi saw it. When Shirahoshi saw his master come to watch him, his eyes lit up and he redoubled his physical training. Very good, just keep this rate and keep increasing. Nami also praised and said a word, and she was still a little curious. At what speed? She suddenly flew up and turned her head to see Anjali, and she was a little clear. What's the matter, master? Come with me, I have something to tell you. Angry said seriously. It is estimated that it will take a lot of time to return this time, but Shirahoshi's training cannot be stopped. What's going on? Nami said blankly. Recently, I have a task, and I have to go out for a while. I will leave it to you for the time being. Anjali's amnesia is also responsible for managing Shirahoshi's physical training. Nami nodded seriously. Taking charge of this physical training is not difficult for her, and she will use several methods in future training. After torturing him well, she comforts her in her heart. Angry said earnestly, just to encourage Shirahoshi and let her persevere when she was the most difficult. It can exercise willpower and endurance, which is why Anjali let every apprentice do physical training. I know. Nami nodded. She also knew that encouragement is always better than scolding. Giving little junior sister more efforts will make her continue to move forward and no longer be afraid of difficulties. There is only the excitement of moving forward, and there is no nervousness or fear of going backward. He said worriedly. He didn't know what would happen when he left the boat. Well, there are only so many things I have to explain to you. You should watch more of Gregory in the past 2 days. But with Nami here, I should also relax and teach the alien apprentices, so that their strength can be upgraded to the Vice Admiral of the C-243 Army as soon as possible. This is his top priority now. Work hard and don't be lazy. Anjali said at one time, but this sentence was said to Shirahoshi. Shirahoshi felt that he was full of strength all over his body, and if he trained well, there would be no problem. Okay, hurry up and practice for me, don't be in a daze. Nami saw Anjali's gradually leaving figure and disappeared. She turned around and urged Shirahoshi. Shirahoshi had been doing physical training there, like an old tree with roots, motionless. After Anjali explained the matter, he left the ship silently. Only Nami knew that the others did not. Chapter 206 The Return of the She-Male King. Looking at this situation, Kuina hurriedly left the woods, just watching many she-males continue to move towards this place, which made Kuina even more curious. What happened to these people, and who did they go? Where? For a while, Kuina felt that it seemed that there were still many problems in this matter, and I had to go and see for myself what was going on. It was probably because this place was quite chaotic, and I really didn't know what was going on, so Kuina just found a place that was closer to them, but probably nothing would happen, and took a look to see what was going on. It turned out that the group of she-males just ran to their so-called Ivankov's side and said loudly, "Ah, my honorable Lord Ivankov, you are finally back." But when Ivankov heard this, he didn't show any expression. He just stared at them and said, "What's the matter? I'm back. Why are you unhappy?" That the other she-males heard this and just said something. How come? We are all very happy. Hurry up, you hurry up. The small island there is our heaven." Ivankov heard this, just didn't know what to say, just looked at the situation, did not say anything. After hearing this, Kuina felt that there must be something in it, but she just doesn't know it now. Maybe it's their current situation. Kuina also thinks, they won't find them here either. To be honest, this Ivankov is nothing but a masculine she-male, and I am still curious when I listen to it now. Kuina doesn't know, but he can still know something. Now he is still here, quietly listen to what's going on. Ivankov and the others are probably very happy, because at this time, they still haven't found Kuina's existence. This Ivankov is a fruit. As for why he can get the respect of this group of she-males, it is unknown to him. After finishing speaking, Ivankov just looked at them quietly and asked them what they said about the situation when I was away. The rest of the she-males didn't know what was wrong with Ivankov, so they just said quietly, "Okay, since that's the case, the meaning of the words of the Lord, we actually don't know what to do." They didn't know how to explain it either. They just thought Ivankov could be a little clearer and keep things going. After saying this, Ivankov just said indifferently, "I just want to ask if there is any problem here, if any outsiders come here." They suddenly seemed to think of Zoro pronounced well, but they felt that at this time, when it was really necessary to mention this matter, they could only tell Ivankov and say, "In this case, there is no some outsider has come here." Hearing this, Ivankov just smiled and said nothing, looking at the distant island and saying, "If that's the case, let's hurry over there." So, everyone went to the island together. Chapter 207 was found. What happened here? Kuina is really curious, what the hell is going on and how to look at this place, it seems to be very familiar. Suddenly, Kuina seems to know something. This place is not the Three-Eyed Clan place. But this is just my guess. To be honest, I don't know who this place is. Looking at this situation now, Kuina suddenly felt flustered. If it seems like this, it is definitely the place where the monsters are. Suddenly, Kuina felt curious. It seemed that she had to go back quickly, and told Zoro about the situation. Thinking of this, Kuina suddenly found that more and more shemales 967 were coming towards her in the place where she was. Kuina felt flustered. She just hurried towards this place subconsciously, but suddenly she was not careful and fall down. Suddenly, Ivankov seemed to know something, so he looked in Kuina's direction and said, "Come here, who are you?" Everyone was told by Ivankov's words, and I didn't know what to do. I just said. He said, "Sir, what the hell is going on here? I swear, no outsiders have come here." After listening to this, Ivankov was in no mood to listen to what the man was talking about, but just said, "Oh, it turns out to be a woman, then come here and see if I have my face." Kuina just felt flustered. What the hell is this situation? If it is another race, then I still know what is going on, but now, I really don't know what to say but. Ivankov didn't say anything, just looked at the people around him, and suddenly said, "Didn't you guys just say that no outsiders came over, but now you show me what the situation is?" The person who was asked by Ivankov like this, suddenly didn't he? Knowing what to say, I just stammered. AGFC before, there were really no outsiders, and I really don't know where this woman of unknown origin came from. After listening to Ivankov, he felt that he had nothing to say. He just looked at Kuina's shivering appearance and suddenly said, "Woman, come here." Although Kuina knew what he was talking about, he felt that he was without the courage to go over. I just said, "Can you let me go?" Kuina doesn't know. Ivankov shook his head helplessly, so he got down, walked in front of Kuina, and said, "It's really a little wild cat who is afraid of others, but since that's the case, how dare you come here?" Although Ivankov said this, he still felt very flustered in his heart, which made Kuina feel that this person is not that simple. But the situation in front of you, no matter what you say, yes or no, is no longer important. He just opened his mouth and said, I actually went wrong. Can you let me leave here? I really didn't mean it." Chapter 208 can only be defeated. Kuina looked at Ivankov and just said something like this, making Ivankov seem like he didn't know what to say. So he just said out of curiosity, "Then, since that's the case, did you come here alone?" This Kuina didn't know what to say, but still felt that the feeling this person gave him was that he was particularly dangerous. "You are so polite now, I have no other way. Feeling that this is the case, it is better for me to tell the truth. Well, in fact, this is the case, and I didn't come here alone." "Oh, then you say, who on earth are you?" Ivankov was not in the mood to take care of the people around him, just thought, why should I lie to myself about this issue? Kuina suddenly felt that there was nothing left in her heart, and she just said, "This. I still have a friend, but we don't know where he is, but don't worry, if you let us leave, we will absolutely won't say anything, your business." Kuina felt that she could guarantee everyone what she said, but why were they still so indifferent? Kuina said the latter. She didn't know how to continue, she just said, "This. What else do you have to do?" Looking at this Ivankov's appearance, Kuina suddenly didn't know what to say, just quietly waiting for Ivankov's answer. After hearing this, Ivankov just suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Say, why lie to me?" Kuina was suddenly surprised. She didn't lie. What the hell is going on? But when I looked up, I saw a person who looked at Ivankov and said, "My lord, I really didn't do it on purpose. As long as you give me a chance, I think I can explain it to you." Just after finishing speaking, Ivankov still seems to have no feelings here. After hearing this, Kuina suddenly wondered if there was still any chance in this matter, so she just said, "Then, can we do it?" I left. "Shish, little girl, don't worry, I think I have other things that I need to do with you. Ask for flowers." This sentence hasn't been finished yet. I just looked at the person who lied just now and said, "Fuck you, I'll tell you later." After finishing speaking, the man hurriedly left the place. Kuina looked at Ivankov, but he didn't know whether he agreed with him or not. No one said anything, and finally, Ivankov said, "Of course this is possible, but I have one more thing that I hope you can agree to." Kuina doesn't know what Ivankov means, so it doesn't really matter if he agrees or not. Suddenly, Ivankov opened his mouth and said, "Actually, you have nothing, as long as you can challenge the biggest warrior of our she-male clan, as long as you win, that's fine." Kuina didn't know if he should agree, because he didn't know what was going on at Zoro. But also suddenly heard the tragic voice of the she-male. Kuina also felt that things might not be very good. Chapter 209 Abandoning Lobbying. It turned out that the situation here in Zoro was like this. For a time, Ivankov just looked at Kuina a little and said, "Girl, what the hell is going on here? It seems that this matter is not as simple as you said." Also, Kuina doesn't know what to explain. "I just hope that Zoro can let go now. Maybe he can come over and discuss 980 inches." But looking at Zoro's appearance, Kuina suddenly doesn't know what to say. Just watching as Zoro came to his side, he helped Kuina up, and said something about what was going on. "Your dear sister, I think this matter can actually be discussed, but I don't know if you have any other ideas." Ivankov seems to know what they will say, so he has already told this matter in advance, and now many things are clear. Zoro didn't know why Ivankov said this, but just looking at Kuina's aggrieved appearance, he suddenly felt distressed, so he helped Kuina and said, "Well, I want to know what your conditions are." Looking at Zoro's burning eyes, Kuina suddenly felt that she had done something wrong, and she didn't know how to continue with these words. Looking at Kuina like this, to be honest, Ivankov was really a little anxious, and just said, "This is what we just said, if you can try it, if you beat their she-male people, we can leave." Speaking of the latter, Kuina's voice was obviously much smaller, and he probably also felt that what he did was really not very good, but Zoro felt that, looking at Ivankov like this, he suddenly felt that he probably knew about them. The purpose is not so simple. You can think about it. I will not embarrass you. Probably you need to think about it. Ivankov probably thought he was being extra generous and just left the problem to them. Kuina felt that there seemed to be no way to do it now, so she just said, "Then can we consider whether you are stupid? This is someone else's territory after all. You think we can win? If we win, we can I still leave?" Zoro didn't know what to say at this time, just finished talking and waiting for Kuina to say so. But, Kuina seemed to slowly understand what was going on, and he said it suddenly. "One sentence. Yes, in fact, you are talking about grabbing and looking at Ivankov and saying, 'No matter what is going on, I reject you about your business.'" Speaking, he went with Zoro, went together and came together. It seemed that Guy 43 Na had planned to fight side by side with Zoro. Ivankov just looked at them like this, but suddenly felt curious, why people didn't listen to what he said. In order to let this little girl know something, Ivankov still seemed to say something deliberately. "Hey, since that is the case, it seems that this little girl is really obsessed." Chapter 210 The Savior arrives at the time of crisis. Ivankov looked at Kuina and Zoro in front of him. They were fighting with the she-male, and fell into a sinking feeling. He vaguely felt that the tricks Kuina and Zoro used were very similar to one person, and couldn't help murmured, "Impossible, right? It's a bit like this. I underestimate that person. But I know the strength of that person. He is obviously much higher than these two. Even if I follow him to learn, it is really shameful to learn how it is now. I can't help but want to ask them here, but I immediately dismiss the idea of 06. I think it's better to wait until they finish the fight. If Kuina and Zoro are really that person's apprentices, I will definitely be able to win the group of she-males in front of me, but if unfortunately I really lose, I can laugh at him when I see that person." Zoro and Kuina don't know what kind of thoughts Ivankov has in mind. In addition, they are now fighting with all their strength against the she-males in front of them. The strength of those she-males is not weak. The two of them have exhausted all their strengths, but they are only tied with each other. Moreover, Kuina gradually couldn't hold it anymore. He felt that if he didn't think of a way, he would definitely lose face here, but if he lost his life here, it would be too much of a loss. Zoro, who was already out of breath beside him, "You can still hold on for as long as." Zoro is desperately parrying, while saying angrily, "I'm afraid it won't last long. I know you've reached the limit. I really didn't expect this group of she-males to be so powerful, and they seem to be using wheel tactics to us, and there will be another wave after the fight. When will we be able to hit the ground like this? Even if we can defeat them, but in the end we both have to be exhausted and exhausted." Kuina's mood is also a little depressed, but now we have been entangled by these she-males. If there is no winner or loser, it is inseparable no matter what. Zoro gritted his teeth and said with a wry smile, "There's no other way. We have to defeat this wave of she-males first, and then let's take the time to leave here immediately, otherwise the two of us really don't have a chance to survive." But Kuina was dissatisfied. "Why isn't the master coming out yet? As for us, he should be nearby. I mean, once we encounter any danger, he must be able to sense it and come to us quickly." Zoro, who was protecting us, said angrily, "Who do you ask me to ask? Two people are fighting here." And Ivankov watched meaningfully from the side. The more he looked at 270, the more he felt that his assumption was completely correct, and he couldn't help muttering, "That kid really doesn't seem to know how to teach my brother." This sentence is deliberately said in a very loud voice. Big. Zoro and Kuina finally heard it at the same time and turned their faces to protest against Ivankov when suddenly a very strange scene appeared in front of them, and a light suddenly flashed above Ivankov's head, which made them even more delighted. This light turned out to be completely golden. Zoro shouted excitedly, "Kuina, it's the master who appeared, and the master finally came to save us." Kuina rolled his eyes. "When will you learn not to make such a fuss?" Chapter 211. Angel finally appeared. Ivankov opened his eyes by the golden light, and hurriedly held his own eyes with both hands. After getting used to the light a little, he slowly opened his eyes and waited until he saw the person appearing in front of him. "It was you." The person I imagined before immediately looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. At this moment, Kuina and Zoro were no longer in the mood to continue fighting with the person in front of them, and immediately ran to the golden light. Kuina even more excitedly shouted, "No, you have appeared. If you don't appear again, maybe we're both going to die here." And now it's Zoro's turn to roll his eyes. "I said, Kuina, when will you learn not to make a fuss?" The copyright of the novel resource belongs to the original author. The text is only for personal study and trial reading. Please delete it within 24 hours after downloading. Please support subscribing to Genuine Novels and refuse piracy. This novel was first published by Dragon. Feilu's novel internal group 1,142,529,731. Feilu's novel internal group 2,929,082,961. More wonderful Feilu novels are in the hands of the group owner. Welcome to the group. I hope you don't get deceived by those scammers. This sentence is exactly what Kuina said about Zoro just now, and now Zoro returned it intact. Kuina was so choked that he couldn't speak, so he complained to this golden light, "Master, look, this Zoro is always like this. Bullying me is too much. You have to discipline him properly too." Zoro also immediately said, "It's you, don't listen to Kuina. This Kuina has bullied me for a long time. It seems that I am always bullied by him. It's not that someone else is real." Zoro and Kuina's master Anjali has finally receded at this moment. However, Ivankov unexpectedly discovered that although Anjali no longer had the golden light on his body, he exuded an unparalleled sword energy. Even himself was infected by this sword energy in Anjali, and he couldn't help but go back. Take this step back. Those she-males had officially started fighting with Kuina and Zoro, and they were about to defeat the two, but suddenly there was a golden light inexplicably, and they felt that everyone was a little weird, and when they also felt Anjali's body when the fierce sword energy was exuding, there was a look of fear on his face at the same time. Anjali did not laugh at Ivankov so wildly, but silently approached the she-males step by step. He took a step forward, and those people involuntarily took a step back and waited until Anjali took the 10th step forward. Finally couldn't bear it anymore, they threw down their weapons and turned around and ran. Zoro and Kuina clapped their hands happily. Master is a master, as long as you make a move, you will scare the she-males away. At this time, Ivankov also regained his senses, looked at Liu Bei and said with a playful face, I just saw these two little devils and I vaguely guessed that they must be your land, but I am a little afraid to believe that you are. Any idea why? Anjali just raised his eyebrows, ignoring Ivankov. Ivankov was boring, but he still didn't give up, and still looked at Anjali defiantly. The apprentice taught by a powerful person like you is so pustular, it's really laughable, Li Jiao's. If I were you, I might have been killed by a head-on crash, saving these two apprentices from embarrassing themselves everywhere. It didn't make sense. Zoro finally couldn't help but jumped out and said, You stop talking nonsense there, don't you know how much you have? He could finish speaking. Kuina pulled him aside, lowered his voice and said, Master is here, there is no place for you to speak. Chapter 212 Arrival. Zoro had to shut up and looked at Anjali with some doubts. His eyes were full of doubts. Anjali ignored Ivankov and just stared at Kuina and Zoro. You two aren't hurt, are you? Kuina hurriedly shook her head. I'm not injured, I just don't know how Zoro is. Zoro scratched the back of his head and said with a smile, I wasn't injured either, but I was really tired just now. If my master shows up so late, maybe the two of us will be exhausted to death. Kuina couldn't help but rolled her eyes again. You're going to be exhausted, I'm strong and very strong, Anjali said indifferently. You two are fine, now let's get out of here. At that time, Ivankov wanted to compete with Anjali, but he did not expect that the other party turned a blind eye to the last two salary adjustments, which made Ivankov feel a little uneasy. Seeing that Anjali was about to leave here with Zoro and Kuina, he immediately jumped in front of Anjali, and stretched his arms to block his way. This place is easy to come by, but walking is not so easy. Easy. Could speak, Zoro immediately jumped out. What are you still, AGF? What do you want to do? Kuina was about to reach out to hold Zoro, but it was too late. So he followed Zoro and jumped in front of Ivankov. You are so strange. I begged you on the road just now to let us go. But you didn't agree with life or death. Now that you see our master, you want to fight with our master. Do you know that? You eat a few bowls of dry rice by yourself, can your strength really beat my master? Shook his head lightly and motioned Kuina to stop talking, because sometimes Anjali himself is annoyed by the words of others complimenting him. He is very aware of his own strength. But it is not easy to find your opponent. Ivankov looked at Zoro and Kuina angrily. This is a matter between me and Anjali, you two juniors better step aside. Saying that, he took the initiative to launch an attack on Anjali, but Anjali couldn't dodge it, so he had no choice but to parry. This move, Ivankov immediately knew that his strength was too far from others, but he was not afraid and did not admit defeat, because he knew that he had a secret weapon. Thinking of this, he immediately jumped up, a dozen steps away from Anjali, and looked at Anjali with a sneer. Don't worry, I seem to have forgotten something, I'll come back to you when I'm done. I don't believe that you can really win the battle to the death. Good words to persuade. In that case, if you have any tricks, just use them. After listening to Ivankov, he looked up and laughed wildly, and suddenly he had a handmade syringe or something. Zoro and Kuina stared at Ivankov. What are you doing? Ivankov grinned and said, No, I just want to add some energy. Saying that the needle of the syringe stabbed into his arm, Anjali's eyes finally changed a little, and he murmured, It seems to be interesting. The 213th chapter turned out to be an opponent. Anjali silently watched Ivankov inject. Ivankov looked at Anjali proudly. I thought you were going to stop me, but I didn't expect you to let go of the last chance so easily. Don't you know what a terrible opponent you are facing? Anjali shook his head gently. I only know that the real strength is absolutely impossible to obtain by relying on such sidelines, and it is still possible to obtain temporary power, but after all, it is only a mirror, and there is absolutely no way for Ivankov to be lasting, but Ivankov is cold. He snorted and said, "Go to the underworld and talk to King Yama about you." Said Ruo rushed towards Anjali again. This time's attack was completely different from the previous one. Anjali deeply felt that Ivankov was completely different from the previous one, and even faintly worried about whether he could really defeat him. Just when his eyes changed a little bit, Ivankov saw through Anjali's thoughts and smiled even more proudly. "If I'm afraid, just admit defeat, but I know that in front of your two disciples, you want to save face, but let me tell you one thing, if you are beaten down by me in front of them, you think they will. What do you think of you? From the look of their admiration for you when you appeared just now, you can tell that they admire you to the point where they are so utterly obsessed with you that they will go wherever you ask them to go, but once you lose to come on, think about that scene, do you think it's special, funny?" Anjali calmly parried Ivankov's move. He wasn't in a hurry, because he wanted to see how good Ivankov was and whether he could really compete with himself. Kuina and Zoro next to him couldn't stand it anymore, especially at this time. Zoro was about to tell Anjali the summary of his experience of fighting with the she-male just now. She could speak. Kuina immediately discovered Zoro's thoughts. Kuina's eyes were quick and his hands were quick, and he immediately stretched out his hand to cover Zoro's mouth. Zoro was unprepared, and forcefully broke free from Kuina's cover of his own mouth, and said angrily, "What are you doing?" "Zero. Ask for flowers." Kuina said lightly. "Nothing, I just want you not to do stupid things." Seeing that Zoro doesn't understand, Kuina has to explain. "Anjali is our master. How powerful he is. You and I'm afraid it's the clearest and none of them. Do you think there really is a she-male in this world that master can't deal with?" Zoro nodded after hearing this, but after seeing the battle between Anjali and Ivankov again, he couldn't help but worry again. Kuina looked at the look on Zoro's face and knew that he still didn't believe Anjali could beat Ivankov unscathed. "Knowing that it is useless to say anything more, I can only say lightly, if you don't believe it, just wait and see." Zoro hurriedly retorted, "When did I say I didn't believe it?" At this time, the battle between Anjali and Ivankov had reached a fever pitch. Ivankov's forehead was already dripping with sweat, but Anjali still looked relaxed, and finally Ivankov roared and made a move, and the result was still no suspense. Chapter 214 is convinced. Kuina looked at Zoro proudly. "What am I talking about? How could this Ivankov win our master with such a crooked method? Our master is the only master in the world." Zoro had to stick out his tongue and stop talking. Because he knew that for a moment, he almost really believed that Ivankov could at least tie with the master, which means that Zero Chi-Chi's confidence in Anjali is not as strong as that of Kuina. This is indeed something worth reviewing. Now that the battle is over, Ivankov gasped heavily, staring at Anjali with complex eyes, and finally his eyes became admiring. Out a long sigh of relief. "It was I who lost, and I was convinced that I lost. When I saw the skills of your two disciples, I thought that your strength was only the same. You know that there are many people in the world with the same strength." Exaggerated words, so after seeing you, I can't help but want to play with you. After speaking, he raised an already empty syringe in his hand. "I originally thought that with this secret weapon, I could at least get you a tie, but I didn't expect to lose." Zoro felt that he should jump out and say at this time. After 2 sentences, he rubbed his own mouth and coughed softly. "I remember that before you started fighting, my master had already said not to use such crooked methods, but at that time you were invincible, no matter what. Don't believe it, now you know the pain, right?" Ivankov heard these words to himself in his hand just now. He might have rushed over and beat him up, but now it's a little ugly to beat other disciples in front of Anjali. Second, he had already lost the battle, and the disciples said a few swear words, which seemed not to be too much. Thinking of this, Ivankov had to sigh. "You were right." After he finished speaking, he looked at Anjali and said sincerely, "People say that nostalgia is better than meeting by chance, and we don't know each other. Why don't you stay here and let me entertain you? so that we can talk when we meet again in the future." Anjali stood quietly, which made Ivankov a little baffled. He didn't know Anjali's calm face. What was thinking under the surface? Maybe it was turbulent, or it might still be calm. Ivankov couldn't judge, but one thing Ivankov knew very well was that he had been waiting anxiously, for fear that Anjali would refuse his invitation. So he looked at Anjali expectantly. Finally, after a long time, Anjali let out a light sigh and said slowly, "I feel very relieved to hear that you said that you admitted defeat just now. At least it didn't make you particularly embarrassed, because you still have to continue to live on this island. If you lose very badly, it will have a negative impact on your prestige on this island." Ivankov looked at Anjali 48 for unknown reasons. I don't know why Anjali said such a thing, he had to listen silently. Anjali finally finished speaking. Ivankov looked at Anjali hesitantly. "I'm afraid you didn't understand what I said just now. I think Lu Ming stayed on this island for a few days, and then came to appreciate the scenery of this island. And secondly, so that I can do my best as a landlord." Chapter 215 refused to invite. Anjali shook his head gently. "I'd better get out of here as soon as possible, because I think your island is really boring." Left with Kuina and Zoro. Ivankov was left in a daze, and finally waited until Anjali was about to walk to the beach. Ivankov reacted and quickly chased after him, shouting loudly while chasing back, "Anjali, please stay still." Anjali had to stop Ivankov meaningfully, and when Ivankov came to him out of breath, he raised his eyebrows and asked lightly if you had changed your mind. "If you didn't feel happy just now, I can still play with you, but I have nothing to say. If I play again, I'm afraid I won't be merciful to you. You weigh your own abilities. How many tricks do I stick to?" Ivankov hurriedly shook his head and said, "I don't mean that. I have deeply understood from the battle just now that I'm probably no match for you no matter how long I've been cultivating. I'm just here to help you." After speaking, he smiled awkwardly. "I have a ship from Shanghai here, and it is useless to stay with me. Since you are going to sea, you must be able to use this rotten ship, so I will use it as your separation. A present for you, at least as a souvenir." Quote. Had time to speak, Kuina stood up and said, "I have nothing to offer, are you playing some tricks again?" Zoro also echoed next to him. "I think the same as you. This Ivankov must be unconvinced because he lost in the hands of our master, and he felt that he couldn't beat him no matter what, so he wanted to use some inferior means." Kuina immediately took over the conversation. "That's right, I don't think he has any good intentions in sending the boat. He must have done his hand and foot on the boat, and when we get on his pirate ship, we won't go to the village before or after. When there is not even a piece of land around the shop, maybe the ship will sink." These two sing and reconcile. Ivankov was originally kind, but now even he himself was a little scared, because the more he listened, the more he felt that he seemed to be what Kuina and Zoro said. Finally, Ivankov couldn't stop and waved his hand hurriedly. "You two misunderstood. I really didn't mean that. The reason why I gave you a boat is because I deleted from the bottom of my heart the strength of Anjali. Respected." Anjali nodded lightly. "If that's the case, then I'll accept this ship with a smile." Not only was Ivankov surprised, but Zoro and Kuina also stared at Anjali with wide-eyed disbelief. 660 Kuina he couldn't help but ask, "Master, what if this Ivankov really has some conspiracy?" Anjali answered very succinctly and turned to look at Ivankov. "He doesn't dare." Ivankov nodded immediately. "That's right, I really dare not." Zoro and Kuina had no choice but to board the boat that Ivankov gave to Anjali. Ivankov kept standing on the beach and watched Anjali go away on the boat that he had sent until he couldn't see any shadows. After a long sigh, they returned to their residence and Zoro and Kuina were watching the endless sea from the deck at the moment. Chapter 216 turned out to be Pudding's ghost. "Do you think Ivankov will prepare some good wine on the boat to entertain our master?" Zoro suddenly looked at the beach and asked Kuina next to him. This sentence reminded her. Kuina clapped her hands and smiled and said, "Ah, Ivankov's admiration for our master, I think this sentence must be true. If you want to give it to someone you admire, wouldn't it be true? Will you have some necessities, especially wine, ready on this boat? Zoro shook his head gently. I don't think wine is a necessary item. The most needed things in this sea are fruits and fresh water. At most, add some food to get Kuina's faint look at the distant sea. Said, alcohol is also essential for a character like our master. Zoro stopped talking. The two of them were silent like that, and finally when it was getting dark, he looked up at the horizon where only a golden-edged sunset was left, and suddenly asked, why do you say Master wants us to look for 3 eyes? The clan deliberately gave the wrong orientation and let us come to the Shemale Island Tilda. This question was exactly what Kuina wanted to ask, but he let Zoro speak first. Kuina turned around, leaned her back against the railing on the deck, let the wind ruffle her long hair, sighed and said, Master probably has his own ideas, sometimes we really can't figure out Master's thoughts. So at the beginning, I was a little puzzled, but then I figured out that we are both safe and sound. Maybe Master wants to use this opportunity to train us. Zoro listened quietly, and when Kuina finished speaking, he himself turned around and leaned back against the railings on the deck like Kuina, and said with dim eyes, I always feel that things are not so simple, although I also admire that you can think of it this way, because thinking about the problem this way will make you less troublesome. The two were talking when words suddenly appeared in front of them, looking at them meaningfully. I have heard what we said just now, but this question is a bit complicated to answer, so I decided not to answer it. Kuina and Zoro stared at Anjali at the same time. Anjali could see from their eyes that these two people must not give up. If they don't tell them, this question will become a knot in their hearts, and they don't know when it will break out. Thinking of this, Anjali suddenly smiled. Although I don't want to explain it to you, I have a way to make you understand what all this is about. After finishing speaking, Zoro and Kuina were caught off guard, cut off their wrong memories, and used their correct memories. When the two of them woke up again, they carefully recalled what happened to Shijan and finally Kuina exclaimed, it turns out that this is all the ghost of pudding. I just said that we were on the island, how Nuo Jiao, it's a bit too easy. It's impossible for a smart character like Pudding not to take extra precautions, but I didn't expect that he would deliberately let us hit the knife and then give us this kind of trajectory. Zoro also said fiercely, this person is too vicious, don't let it fall into my hands. Once I catch her, I will let him taste my power. It is best to put her in this come to Shemale Island and let her taste what it is like. Chapter 217 Angry. Ji Yuna suddenly shouted, ah! Zoro's face was also ugly. At this time, he heard Ji Yuna screaming strangely. Although he could understand Ji Yuna, he still felt very strange about Ji Yuna's reaction. He wanted to ask Ji Yuna what was going on, but he didn't feel right in his heart, so he didn't speak. Of course, this is also because of the reason why Anjali is still here. Anjali also felt very strange to Ji Yuna's reaction, so she asked Ji Yuna, what's the matter with you? Ji Yuna looked at Anjali with a haggard face and said that I just feel so uncomfortable. Before Ji Yuna finished speaking, she walked around in the boat, and then rummaged through the boxes there. Anjali asked again, Guina, what's the matter with you? Pudding. After Ji Yuna said 2 words, she rummaged in a cabinet. There were books and some sundries in the 120 compartments of the cabinet, all of which were brought to the floor by Ji Yuna. Anjali saw this time. I finally understand, this is Ji Yuna's own overreaction. Zoro, who was standing on the side with an expressionless face, and said with a smile, haha, Guina may not be able to accept it for a while, please comfort her. Anjali thought that Zoro had no reaction, it should be no problem, but when he finished speaking, he saw that Zoro still didn't respond, like a statue. Zoro. Anjali shouted, wondering when Zoro shouted loudly, I can't stand it anymore, Pudding, I'm here to find you. Zoro roared, grabbed his sword, slammed into the door and rushed out. Zoro in surprise, and shouted Zoro after a few seconds, what's wrong with you? He thought Zoro was walking on the boat, but he felt something was wrong, so he walked out. Who knew that when he got to the deck, he saw Zoro kicking a small boat into the water, and Anjali shouted in surprise, "Hey, what are you doing?" But Zoro didn't answer, jumped into the boat and kept rowing to the Cake Island going. Anjali stood on the fence and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" Zoro yelled, "I'm going to Pudding to settle the account." "Are you crazy?" Anjali said depressedly. "How do you get to Cake Island with a boat?" But Zoro is even more crazy, rowing the boat at a faster speed, and soon the boat goes out a long way. Anjali was also surprised to see it, but Zoro was angry at this time. He felt that what he said was useless, so he just ignored him. But to Anjali's surprise, he soon saw Zoro's boat appearing in front of him. It turned out that Zoro relied on a moment of brute force to row the boat very fast, but the brute force soon used up almost, and the boat slowed down. Anjali's ship chased after him again. Said with a smile when he saw Zoro, "Come on up. What time, AGFD, do you need to row like this to get to Cake Island?" Zoro saw Anjali's surprised expression as well, but soon became ashamed again. He had wanted to continue rowing, but after a few strokes he gave up. Said to Zoro again, "If you go on like this, you will never be able to reach the Cake Island. How about I give you a rope and pull you to the Cake Island?" After speaking, Anjali laughed out loud. Zoro was also depressed. He knew that he was too angry and did something stupid, so he jumped from the small boat back to the big boat. Anjali was relieved to see Zoro coming up. But Zoro came up and took 2 ropes and jumped back to the boat, then tied the boat, pulled the boat back to the side of the big boat, and angry saw Zoro finish this and said, "Let's go back inside to rest." "Oh, yes, hey, I don't know what Gyuyina is doing." Zoro is depressed, and followed Anjali back to the room, only to see Gyuyina biting the book. Anjali said depressedly, "Guina, what are you doing?" Gyuyina bit the book and said, "I'm so mad, I need to eat something." Anjali felt blinded and said, "You don't need to eat books if you want to eat. Isn't there still something to eat in the kitchen?" Gyuyina teared, and bit down a few pages of paper to say what to eat anyway. At this time, she saw Zoro standing at the door again, and asked, "If you were looking for pudding, why did you come back so quickly?" Speaking of this, Zoro was also depressed. Anjali laughed for a while, and then said to Guina, "I really got you too. We are at sea now. How does he go to Pudding?" Guina and say, "That's abominable, Pudding." "All right, calm down too." Anjali comforted Guina and said, "Our ship is heading for Cake Island, so be angry or something. It's not very good to be angry when you see Pudding." "Are we going to Cake Island?" Gyuyina heard that she was going to Cake Island, which made her feel better. Chapter 218 Looking for Someone. The big ship sailed at sea for a few days, and finally Cake Island appeared in everyone's sight. After a few days, although Guina and Zoro still feel angry with Pudding, they have calmed down. The 3 of them stood on the deck, watching the big cake getting closer and closer, and they became excited. Pudding was doing those strange flowers in the garden at this time, and he was still humming a little song slowly in his mouth and seemed to be in a good mood. Subordinates hurried over and shouted Pudding. Pudding looked back at the man, then, "Shish," and said to stop talking. The man stopped talking, but he seemed to be in a hurry, so he looked a little anxious. And Pudding felt in a good mood, so she didn't want to be disturbed by that person. She continued to hum a little song like a flower. After a while, the subordinate seemed to be unable to wait any longer, and said, "Pudding, is something going to happen?" Pudding tapped the pedals with his finger at this time, stood up, looked into the distance, and said with some emotion, "Don't things happen all the time?" Her men seemed a little surprised, but agreed, and then he said, "So, we saw Zoro and Guina standing on a boat in the port." Pudding showed a puzzled expression and said to himself, "Did they get back so soon?" His subordinates thought Pudding was talking to him, so they replied yes, and seemed very unhappy. Pudding snorted, then laughed and said, "I just want to make them unhappy, and since they dare to come, I'll send them away." After saying this, Pudding was happy again. she hummed the song again, hummed a few words, and asked again. Where are they now? Subordinate thought for a while and said, it's probably about to enter the port. Pudding laughed twice, then said to her subordinates, okay, nothing to do with you, I'll take care of them myself. The subordinate seemed to want to go with Pudding, but seeing that Pudding ignored him, he also said goodbye and left. Pudding felt that Zoro and Guina were not a big problem, so he didn't seem to be in a hurry. She played in the garden for a while before getting up to find Zoro and Guina. Zoro and Guina had just disembarked at this time. Angeli walked down with you, and when she saw the things around, she said to Guina. There are all kinds of delicious food here, don't you plan to eat? When Guina was in a bad mood, she ate a lot, so Angeli would say something like this. But Guina looked at the food around, but said that the things here make me sick. Why is that? Guina said. No appetite, I just want to find Pudding now. Zoro also said. Ah, you're right, now it's time to find Pudding, and Angeli saw their attitude, so he smiled and said okay, let's go. The three kept walking forward, but for some reason, when they came this time, the surrounding environment seemed to be different from before. The three of them walked and walked, but found that they had been going around in circles. Guina first discovered this problem. She pointed to a tree and said, you see, we just walked past here and back again. Although Zoro and Angeli were a little suspicious, they were both a bit lunatic and couldn't quite see what was going on. Angeli says, it's just a little bit similar, how do you call it back to the original place? Seeing that these two people didn't believe it, Ji-Yuna said anxiously, I remember it was here, I just saw it. But when she saw that the two of them didn't really believe it, she simply opened her mouth and took a big bite out of a tree. Angeli said, Ji-Yuna, do you want to eat again? Ji-Yuna shouted unhappily, I'm marking. Zoro exclaimed, I don't need any signs, my memory is fine, come with me, I'll lead the way. After speaking, Zoro walked forward excitedly. Ji-Yuna didn't believe Zoro in the first place, but she came back after walking for a while. Ji-Yuna shouted out, did you see it? This is the consequence of your leading the way. Zoro didn't believe it, so he walked forward by himself, only to come back soon. Ji-Yuna laughed at Zoro again, saying that she led the way by herself, and then made some marks on the road and walked slowly. Pudding was not very anxious about the arrival of Zoro and Ji-Yuna, so she also walked slowly to find Zoro and Ji-Yuna, but after walking for a while, she still hadn't met Zoro and Ji-Yuna, so she was a little strange. She saw a subordinate who was hiding in the woods and asked him what happened. The subordinate said that Zoro and the others got lost in the woods. Pudding scolded the idiot and hurried to the woods, but she didn't expect to see Angeli's figure as soon as she arrived in the woods. Pudding had a worried look on his face. Chapter 219 Attack. Pudding was surprised to see Angeli and worried because her attacks were useless against Angeli. Pudding felt very angry when he saw these three people, while Angeli and Zoro and Guina were still wandering in the woods at this time. Pudding originally wanted to escape, but thinking that they had already come to Cake Island, it was useless to escape, so he aimed his gun at Angeli and fired a shot from the back. Angeli just looked down at the mark on the ground, and as a result, escaped Pudding's sneak attack. The three of them were surprised when they heard the gunshots. They turned their heads and looked in the direction from which the gunfire came, and they saw Pudding. When Pudding saw that they had discovered 350 himself, he shouted, you bastards, since you're still here. You are the bastard, die. Zoro and Guina were already angry with Pudding, but they became even more angry after seeing her, and they both rushed towards Pudding at the same time. Pudding fired several shots at the two men, but missed. At this time, Pudding's two men also jumped out of the woods to stop Zoro and Ji-Yuna. Zoro and Ji-Yuna fought with them for a while, and the outcome was inexorable. Pudding just laughing at you idiots, hurry up and go back. Angeli hurried up to help, and it didn't take long for the three of them to defeat Pudding's two subordinates. Pudding wanted to run away when he saw that his subordinates had been defeated, but both Zoro and Guyana fiercely blocked her path. Pudding shouted and said, "Why are you so angry? I don't want to play with you." Pudding suddenly rushed towards Gyuyina. Gyuyina slashed at Pudding with a fierce sword, but was knocked down at this time. One of Pudding's men jumped up and knocked Guina to the ground. Pudding jumped over, ran deep into the woods, and said with a laugh, "You idiots, don't try to stop me." Zoro was furious, chased after him, and shouted loudly, "One shot." He slashed down with a sword, and the sword she cut down a big tree in front of Pudding. The tree fell, blocking Pudding's way. Pudding stopped. Angeli and Zoro caught up again. However, Gyuyina was still very annoyed. After Pudding's subordinate who stepped on Pudding knocked Gyuyina down, Gyuyina was knocked to the ground soon. Gyuyina was particularly annoyed, so she kept stepping on that person. Pudding saw Gyuyina stepping on her hands, and he couldn't bear it. He couldn't help but shouted, "Hey, can you step on it lightly?" Gyuyina stepped on it harder after hearing it. But Pudding's subordinates felt grateful after hearing Pudding's shouting, stretched out a hand and gave a thumbs up, and said in pain that there is no problem, "I can hold on, ah." Guina stepped on him again. Angeli and Zoro looked back at Guina and ignored her. The two of them walked towards Pudding. Angeli says, "Where are you going now?" Pudding snorted. The road ahead was blocked, and it was not easy to get past. Zoro stepped forward and said, "Why do you want to change our memory?" Pudding laughed and said, "What, when did I change your memories?" Acting stupid. Gyuyina walked up and said angrily, "It's all because of you that we took the wrong road and encountered danger." Speaking of going the wrong way, Pudding laughed again and said, "How can you blame me for going the wrong way? Don't you get lost in the woods?" Three were ashamed by Pudding talking about the matter of getting lost just now. Zoro exclaimed, "We didn't get lost, we were just walking in the woods." Angeli was moved by Zoro's statement and gave him a thumbs up. Pudding still he smiled and said, "You guys actually like to walk, who knows that you are not walking the wrong way, he. All three felt ashamed about getting lost, so they didn't know how to answer Pudding for a while. Pudding took the opportunity to say, "So you have no reason to blame me at all, aren't you all doing well now? Do what you love, don't bother me." After saying this, Pudding pretended she was okay and wanted to leave. "Wait a moment," Angeli said. Pudding looked back at Angeli and smiled. "What else do you say?" Angeli said, "Three-Eyed Clan." The two of them were going to find the Three-Eyed Clan, but they went to the wrong place. "I said, 31." Pudding interrupted Angeli, "It's not my fault, it's their own brains and problems, they can't remember things well." Angeli said, "You want to change their memory because you don't want them to find the Three-Eyed race, don't you?" Pudding didn't answer, but Angeli added, "Because you are related to the Three-Eyed." Pudding finally couldn't help it at this time, and said angrily that you should die. After she finished speaking, she fired several shots at Angeli, but she couldn't hit Angeli and easily avoided Pudding's attack. Chapter 220 to question. Angry dodged Pudding's attack. He still stood opposite Pudding and said, "I'm looking for your father, why didn't you tell him his whereabouts?" "Go to hell, I'm not afraid of you at all." Pudding shot Angeli again. Angeli blocked a few bullets with his sword, then jumped in front of Pudding, pointed his sword at Pudding and said, "You have no chance at all, so it's better to answer my question honestly." Pudding turned his head to one side and said, "You want to kill or shave as you like." "I can't say anything," but Angeli was a little embarrassed. He said, "You think I dare not kill you?" Pudding asked Angeli to kill her, but Angeli was a little helpless. He said to Zoro, "Aren't you very angry to kill her? Now it's your turn to do it." Zoro stood aside and said, "She's already defeated, I won't kill someone who's already been defeated." 06 Angeli had a headache. Pudding laughed and said that you can't do anything, right? Ha ha ha, then just let me go, everyone owes no one. Who said I couldn't do it? Gyuyina said suddenly and viciously. Teach her to me. Zoro and Angeli looked at Gyuyina in surprise. Angeli asked, "What are you going to do with her?" Yuna said. Anyway, I have a way. Pudding was a little worried, but didn't really care, just snorted. Guina walked over and suddenly threw Pudding down, and then kept hitting Pudding. Exclaimed Pudding. No, stop. Yuna stopped and asked, are you going to tell me now? Pudding said, I don't say. Guina grabbed Pudding and beat him again. Anjali and Zoro couldn't stand it anymore. But there is no other way. Pudding was beaten again and shouted again. Don't fight, I said it's not enough. Yuna didn't want to stop, Pudding screamed. Anjali and Zoro quickly pulled Guina away. Anjali said to Yuna, wow, why are you so cruel to her? Yuna snorted and said, I've been very upset for a long time. Pudding was teary-eyed, feeling sad when he touched the red and swollen parts of his body. Anjali went up and said to Pudding. Well, now you should tell me where your father is. I have no idea. The three of them thought that Pudding still refused to speak. Anjali angrily said to Zoro, let Guina come over. Yuna had already gritted her teeth and wanted to do it again, but when she heard Anjali say that, she felt very strange, so she looked at Anjali Pudding with strange eyes and said quickly, I really don't know, don't put it off. She let it go. Yuna has a feeling of wonder in her heart, but she feels that there is no problem. When Anjali heard Pudding say this, he finally understood something, and said that you really don't know. Pudding rubbed the sore spot with his hands again, and then said, I don't know, so it's useless for you to ask me. Anjali looked at Pudding and felt that she didn't seem to be lying, and was a little disappointed. But Yuna said dissatisfiedly, do you think you can deceive me? I didn't tell you. Pudding took 2 steps back when he saw Yuna walking towards her. I really don't know, no matter what you do to me, I can't tell. Yuna didn't feel like she was lying when she saw Pudding's expression, but another question suddenly appeared in her head. Since you don't know, who knows? Pudding hesitated for a moment, I don't know either. But this answer made Guina and Anjali unconvinced, both of them felt that she was lying. Guina said with a smile. You thought I couldn't see that you were lying just now. Guina stepped forward, grabbed Pudding, and said, you still want to suffer, don't you? No, I say. Anjali asked on the side, then who knows the whereabouts of your father 820? Pudding shook off Guina's hand and said, of course, the only person who knows his whereabouts is the ant. No one knows about him except the ant. It's not surprising that Anjali is not surprised. He asked again. Where is that ant? Pudding laughed at this question, and said, where is Auntie? It's not easy to find it, you can find it yourself. Guina said, are you going to be beaten again? Pudding looked at Yuna, but she still didn't want to say anything. Anjali said to Pudding, do you want me to release Guyana again? After Yuna heard Anjali say it this time, she finally couldn't help it, and said angrily, don't let Yuna anymore, what do you think of me? Anjali smiled and apologized, and then he said to Pudding, tell it or not, your choice. Pudding looks at the fierce Guina, and she herself has nowhere to run, although she doesn't want to say it, but she also thinks a little bit. To say it out. Chapter 221 Persecution. Pudding felt that this kind of thing was for him. It has really made me feel extremely unbearable, and Pudding feels like he has a big grievance. After all, this kind of thing is not what he really wants to do for him, but for Anjali's various practices. It really feels very sad for some people, and there have been some complete breakdowns in the friendship between the two people. Because this kind of thing has come to the brink of being unbearable for him, and he also feels that he can no longer bear this kind of pressure for Anjali's various pressing questions. If you don't say it like this, then maybe at the end, you may really be killed by Anjali. Also Pudding now feels that Anjali is really unreasonable. In the past, he was a relatively talkative person, but now he is able to do this because of these various problems. Treating myself like this is beyond my imagination. Anjali, how can you treat me like this? You want to use this method to treat me, don't you think your heart is particularly unclean? I want to find my father, that is my problem. If you can help me, then I am very grateful to you, but if you can't help me, I also hope that you can stand by and not give me like this adds some troubles here tilde. Even if you want to find Auntie, you can only get clues from Pudding, which is one of the reasons why Anjali does not let Pudding go, because Anjali knows that if he really doesn't force Pudding, maybe it will be true I won't tell myself where my aunt is. The most important thing is that if I can't find my aunt, I can't find her father. At the end, I'll be playing with a bamboo basket. Pudding, let me tell you, if you really don't say anything, then don't blame me for being rude, and this kind of thing is actually very clear and understandable to me. For such a question, if you don't answer me, then you should think about the consequences of betraying me. You know what kind of person I am, and I will do anything to achieve my goals. Do you really think that you want me to punish you in order to protect him? Is this the one thing you want the most? Some of Pudding really couldn't bear it, because he knew that he was not able to bear Anjali's questioning at all. Besides, if he really doesn't say it, maybe Anjali can find some other ways, so Pudding thinks it's better to let go of some things. Man, how could he not? Let go of yourself. Actually, just when Pudding was about to answer, suddenly, Anjali found that a piercing sword technique had rushed towards him. He quickly pushed Pudding away, then picked up his sword and went up to meet him. Anjali's swordsmanship can be said to be very sharp, but he also felt that building a house for his own attack could also make him feel a little caught off guard. Although Anjali has now faced the attack of the attack wave, for Anjali, it is difficult to defeat the opponent quickly. Kuina and Zoro, who were standing next to Anjali just now, have already being related. It is indeed not easy for Anjali to see, because the two of them have had some serious problems now. If they can't find their father, they may die in the end, so now that Anjali is fed, there is no way for the two of them to be safe, and he can only be forced to retreat. They retreated to a safe distance. I looked like it was my aunt who launched the attack. She was a little happy, because the person she was looking for was him. At that time, Pudding was still protecting him, and he didn't let himself know his whereabouts. Now that he has taken the initiative to come to him, it is very easy to find his father, Zhao Zhao. After all, for Pudding, maybe only the aunt can know his father's whereabouts. Now the aunt I was able to come here in person. That must be because you want to resolve this matter satisfactorily, otherwise, how could it appear at such a moment? Auntie really didn't expect you to show up in this place. Just now, I was talking to Pudding that I wanted to find you and find his father. Is it only you who can know a specific destination of his father? If so, can you help us find him? Chapter 222 Accusations. Auntie could see it just now, and Anjali already wanted to use force like Pudding. At this time, he couldn't stand it. He jumped out on his own initiative and attacked Anjali. If he hadn't seen such a result, how could he hide in the dark and observe them secretly, because Auntie knew about this kind of thing, but it was already a problem for him. An unforgivable mistake. Now that everything has happened, no matter what the result is, you must bear it, and the most important thing is such a result. In fact, you are willing to bear the consequences, not like forget about what other people imagined. I think you are a sinister villain. If you didn't want to attack Pudding just now, how would you think I could do it? Besides, I know where his father 200 is, but I don't think this matter has anything to do with you. If you really want to know where his father is, then you might as well kill me, because for me his father's safety is the top priority, and how can an outsider like you deserve it know about one of his father's whereabouts? Anjali didn't think that he was so kind. Although he used to say old sayings like this in the past, Anjali would never believe it at that time because he felt that if it was to make friends, it would be too difficult. He will definitely think about it seriously and think of the other party, but now it seems that Anjali should still say the old man's words. It's really because the ancients did not deceive me. Auntie, I think you have misunderstood. Pudding and I, Abi, are good friends. How can I treat him like this? I was just a little anxious just now. Because you should also be able to know such a thing. For us, it is really a very important thing to mention. We came to Cake Island for such a thing. If this thing can't be done well, do you think we have been here for so long, is it completely in vain? Besides, we have already understood such a truth when we were outside, so we were able to come here, just to know the truth of a matter, and his father has already avoided us. Don't you want us to find out the truth of this matter? Auntie felt that Anjali was a little aggressive, and at this time Pudding also felt that his friend had already made a deal. The most important thing is this kind of thing. In fact, for them it has been considered to be righteousness. Forget it, you have already been able to have this kind of problem. I think you should reflect on it. Otherwise, how can I not tell you about his father's whereabouts? Besides, Pudding, how can I not tell you my whereabouts? So what you said is all nonsense. The main thing is that I really don't want to discuss this kind of issue with you anymore, because I think it's really wise to discuss this issue with you, Auntie. After saying this, in the future, Anjali will not be given any chance to refute at all, because he feels that this kind of question has no language that can explain it to him. Look at the sword. The ant rushed up after shouting. His moves were very clever, but Anjali had already had some storage when he suddenly picked up the moves just now. This time, the two of them had a better conversation. But suddenly he turned his face, which really caught Anjali by surprise, but he also knew where his abilities were. Down. You make one move and I block one move. The two of you have been fighting for an unknown number of rounds, and at this time, Anjali felt that he could not describe his mood at this moment in words. Although I said that I didn't achieve the result I wanted this time, but if the big cat continues to make such strong arguments, I will definitely not be merciful. I think you really have some things now that I can't feel you in the end. What is it for? Do you really think that I am a very uneasy person, or do you think that the real purpose of my coming to this Cake Island is what I want to do? Now I feel that you have too much hostility towards me. Don't you know that the reason why I came here is just to seek the truth of a matter? Since none of you want to tell me the truth of this matter, then I want to find out more about this matter, because I think only this way can make me feel more at ease. Chapter 223 Battle. At first, Anjali didn't realize how much of an impact this incident had, but now it seems that the ant's heart is dead and she can't let herself see Pudding's father. Put your heart in your stomach. I can't let you find out about this matter. The most important thing is that this kind of thing is also a top priority for us. The two of them were facing each other in the painting, and while Pudding was standing by, waving the sword in his hand, he looked at Anjali. This was too deceptive, and even for a person at the level of an ant, he could do it. Play a tie with him. It has really made Pudding look at him with admiration, but now Pudding has closed his eyes due to hatred, and he knows that this matter really can't let Anjali continue to investigate, otherwise he really doesn't have it. Good fruit to eat, so he felt that if Angel was angered, then maybe Auntie can make it happen by herself, and in the end, she has the upper hand, and the things he does will not be known by other people. A heroic person can actually stand on equal footing with Auntie. I don't know where your abilities have gone. I really feel that those people in the past compared you to a godlike person. It seems that their eyes are already blind, and their brain power has disappeared. Because of his own ability, Anjali still has his own self-knowledge, it's just that he doesn't want to talk nonsense with Pudding, because he doesn't think such a thing is a problem for others at all. How can I not know where my true strength is? And this time a few people came to the island together just to find out the truth. Since Pudding's actions have made people feel that they have too much resentment in their hearts. Now that everything has happened, why don't you dare to face it? Besides, it's a matter of tampering with other people's memories, which really makes people feel very tired. Pudding, I didn't think that you could be considered a character in the past, but now it seems that you are just a villain. It seems that I am really wrong. I used to think that you could be regarded as a hero, but now it seems that you can only be regarded as a bear. Pudding now, no matter how sarcastic Anjali is, it will not continue because he knew that he did something wrong, but he also thought that he would not admit it, and Anjali had no evidence to prove that he did these things, so he came to the island this time just to ask for it. Proof, or just trying to deceive, so how could Pudding be fooled into his trap? I didn't expect you, Angela, to have such a trick. What I can tell you is that your sister and I have played all of your tricks, and I don't hesitate to play, and you only have so many. Just an ability. 0. Ask for flowers. And take pudding's irony seriously, but Zoro and Kuina were really angry because this time it was because of their problems. That's why they came to this island, but now seeing Xiao Mao treat Zhoang like this, it really makes the two of them feel that things have reached this point. If they still couldn't face it, then they didn't know what was waiting for them, so the two of them looked at Pudding very angrily, and raised their long swords in their hands. The people on both sides fought at the same time, so for the cake, it was really destroyed and torn apart, and such a small island was already crumbling. But now the fighting on both sides is very fierce, and the fighting is also very fierce, so for the whole island, he can no longer bear such a blow. This island already has a lot of feelings for Auntie, and most importantly the main thing is that this island for her, the real feeling is that she and Pudding's father jointly established this island. So for the two of them, the island is like their children. Pudding is outside on weekdays, so when they return to the island, they can clearly feel it. This island is the hard work of my father and my aunt, and now the whole island has been destroyed like this. Not only does Pudding feel particularly sad in his heart, but the most important thing is that he really feels in his heart to special hatred and distress. Chapter 224 Defeated. You people really make me so angry. I thought you were good at first, but now it seems that since you can damage my cake and become like this, I will definitely not let you go. If you let me catch you later, I'm sure I'll give you $8 and the hatred in my heart. Besides, look at what you've all made Pudding look like. Do you really want our island to sink? Or do you think that such a thing is already a helpless move for us? Angeli originally wanted to explain the reason for this incident, but now he knew that Auntie was really angry, so he also felt that if he could not defeat Auntie, then if you let her calm down, then what she wants to do can't be done at all, and the most important thing is this kind of problem. In fact, for Angeli, what it wants to solve is only this situation. That's it. So Angeli felt that he should let it calm down, otherwise, things might not be so far. Besides, this kind of problem is actually a matter of benevolence and righteousness for them. If it is really impossible to use and explain to gain their approval, then it can only use force, but this is the last scene Angeli wants to see. Aunt, I know these thoughts in your mind, but I think you should think about it carefully. If you can't solve such a problem, then do you think you can solve the problem in the future? Besides, I just want to ask where his father is. I don't blame him for the mistakes he made in the past, and now I just want you to tell me such an answer. It's just that the ant suddenly split a very large sword chi, and then came over to Angeli. These little bastards have no peace of mind at all. I used to think it was Pudding. I'm sorry to you, but now it seems to me that you are bullying him. If I could avenge him, I would do it, but if you want to know the whereabouts of his father, then I can't tell you unless you catch me and defeat me. After Angeli listened to Auntie's request, he also knew that if he really didn't show some of his abilities to let him see, he was a person with extraordinary abilities. How could he believe in himself? And this kind of question is actually a testimony to other people so that they can see their own abilities. Angeli knows this kind of thing. In fact, for him, wanting to defeat Aunt it's just a matter of minutes. It was just that he was suddenly unguarded. Now that he is already guarded, how can he continue to let Auntie lead by the nose? So now Angeli really doesn't want to procrastinate any longer. Because he felt that if this kind of thing was delayed more, it would not be sure what would happen at the end, so he exerted all his strength, hit Auntie all at once, and pressed it to the side of Zero Pudding on the ground. He was also staring at the battle between Angeli and Auntie all the time, but now Pudding saw that Auntie had been defeated by Angeli, so his mind was a little flustered. He knew that he was actually dealing with it. There is no problem with Zoro and Kuina at all, but if the two of them work together to deal with themselves, it is still a little difficult to deal with the two of them. At this time, Pudding was suddenly distracted and was stabbed in the right thigh by Zoro with an arrow. Pudding hurriedly hid, but was still scratched a little by the splash of light, and blood was already flowing out all of a sudden. I didn't expect the two of you to fight each other so smoothly. Why didn't I think the cooperation between the two of you was so close before? Did the two of you have since made Angeli, after his apprentice, has he been trained to become a pug? Oh 9, if this is the case, I really congratulate you very much. It can be seen that you have completely ruined our friendship, and since you can do such a thing, I also serve you too. The irony of Pudding's foul language is that Zoro and Kuina don't even care about it, because they feel that this kind of thing is nothing more than a matter of reputation for the two of them. But the two of them are fortunate to be able to follow Angeli's side. The most important thing is that the two of them have learned a lot by Angeli's side. 225 conditions. When the three of them fought together, now Pudding was injured, so his footsteps were not flexible, and it didn't take long before Zoro and the others defeated him and pressed him to the ground. Zoro brought Pudding to Big Mom's side, and threw the two of them to the ground, pointing at them both with a sword and said, "How good you two little people were to the two of you in the past, and now I can see that you can treat the kindness we used to you in this way, all of which have been used up by you. Now, this situation really deserves the most for the two of you. The past, I never knew that you could have such a situation, but now I really feel that I was blind to be able to be friends with you." For Zoro's accusation, Pudding didn't have too much emotion in his heart, because in the past, it was because he wanted to use Zoro, so he made good friends with him and became friends with him. In fact, Pudding's heart is in this situation. Face is also understandable. If he hadn't used the two of them himself, maybe Angeli wouldn't have been able to find the island with them, but now he sees that the island has been destroyed by them to what it is today. Pudding also felt very ashamed in his heart. After all, this island was the hard work of his father and aunt, and he looked at the destroyed vegetation and the destroyed items on the island. Pudding felt a special hatred in his heart. He hated himself for not having the ability to defeat them. He hated himself why he didn't have such an ability to destroy them. If his ability could destroy them, how could he be able to defeat them? Let them run wild on Cake Island. Mom, I know about these things, and you are also misunderstood, but what I want to explain to you is that this matter is actually nothing. This time we went to the island just to know about you, the Three-Eyed Clan. And we didn't actually want to fight you when we went to this island. It's just because Pudding has stolen his memory, so we came to ask, if you were really on the island when we first started, tell us the whole truth at the right time, so do you think we can still fight? In fact, Angeli really wanted to explain to the two of them, but he had some clumsy mouths and didn't know how to say things, because there were more things involved. So Angeli knew that he should ask questions without revealing it. If it was true that Pudding and Auntie didn't want to explain so much by themselves, then there was nothing he could do. He could only use force to force the two of them. Speaking of the whereabouts of the Three-Eyed Clan, Angeli, I know you are a very capable person, but in this situation, how do you think I can tell you where the Three-Eyed Clan is? And if I do tell you, do you think they'll be able to spare our whole family's lives? Besides, for this kind of problem, you should put your heart in your stomach, because everything has a cause and an effect, and no matter what it is, we have to bear our own consequences. The ant said so decisively. He can also understand that if he tells this matter, it may be a good thing for the Three-Eyed Clan, but if it is a family annihilation thing for the Tanning Eyeballs, then he has become an eternity. Sinners. Aunt, I told you that this matter is not what you imagined at all, so we came here just to find out what happened to the Three-Eyed Clan. Besides, there were Three-Eyed Clan in the past. The prince wants to worship me as a teacher, so this time I just stopped by to see what happened to his race. If I can really help them, how can I not help them? Angeli knew that if she wanted her sister, in addition to the misunderstanding in her aunt's heart, she still needed her own sincerity, so now she also wants to use her sincerity to tell the incident, and what he wants to reveal to Aunt is that he and the Three-Eyed Pig doesn't have much of a relationship, it's just because of a little thing, so I want to help them a little bit. Angeli's persuasion is actually understandable to the aunt, but she is now watching the whole Cake Island has been scattered by them. It really takes a lot of time and effort to get back to the way it was, so now. Mom felt that this was the best time to negotiate with Anjali, because only at this time could Anjali be able to help herself. Chapter 226 Guidelines. Since you want to know where the three-eyed tribe is, you should restore the entire Cake Island to me. Only in this way can I tell you their specific location. If you don't restore this island to me, then you won't want me to tell you a specific location of them. Anjali heard that the ant had spat out, but she knew that such a thing was actually very difficult for her to do. After all, this Cake Island has been destroyed by them, and it has been in pieces. If you want to recover, it still needs to be done. A very strong one. And this time, I only went to the island with 3 people. If I want to recover, I don't know how much skill I need to spend on myself, and Anjali doesn't want to spend this skill now to do these boring things. What does the whole island look like to him? He didn't take it to heart at all, because there are many such islands, and there are countless small islands in the entire sea that he has missed. Why is this Cake Island able to make the three-eyed clan feel that this is a good life for them? Where is it? Ant, I don't think you are embarrassing me. How can the 3 of us restore this place to its original state for you? You don't realize it. For us, we are thankless for this kind of thing. The most important thing is such a question, what do you think we should do? And for the 3 of us, your request is really too much. Anjali really thinks that Auntie is going too far now, but he can also understand that the reason why he asks such a question is just the island that Auntie loves. It's just that if 3 people really wanted to restore this island, it should be possible to unite. It's just that it will take a lot of energy, and the most important thing is that Anjali is afraid that Ant really used her to restore the island. When all of his skills are exhausted, the 2 of them are attacking himself. If you agree if so, then we'll tell you the exact location of the three-eyed tribe, but if you don't tell me, then you don't want to find them anymore. After all, this island is really big. Without our guidance, it would be impossible for you to find them. Besides, for us, it doesn't matter whether we tell you or not, then it depends on your understanding of the matter. How is it understood? Anjali knows that he has no choice, but he can also understand that if this matter is revealed by himself, or if Pudding and the others succeed in attacking him, then waiting for him, Kuina and Zoro, what will they face? It's all an unknown. If you really want us to restore this island, then you are like a revelation from the sky. You can't attack us again when we have tried our best to restore this island, otherwise the entire race will be wiped out completely, and you will be the sinners of the race. Such an oath must be said to be a very vicious oath. For those who have races, this way of swearing is the most severe punishment in their life. If they really make this kind of oath, if it happens, then they will not be able to break their oath for the rest of their lives. Ant and Pudding also knew that Anjali didn't trust him, but there was no way, because the 2 of them were powerless to renovate the island, and only depended on Anjali, so the 2 of them really, according to Anjali's method, the 2 of them swear heavily. The 3 of Anjali used their abilities and tried their best to restore the entire island to Pudding and Auntie. The 2 of them were there quietly watching the 3 of them work there until the entire island was fully restored. At that time, the 3 of them did not lose their trust in him and restored the entire island. They also went through untold hardships, and no one could bear the hardships. The most important thing was such a hardship individuals can experience. No promise. We have restored the island to you. Should you tell us according to your own oath, where exactly are the three-eyed pigs or where they are, if not? If so, you should also be able to feel whether the poisonous oath you made can be fulfilled. Of course, the ant didn't want to be promised this poisonous oath, so he told Anjali that the three-eyed clan should be on the east side of Cake Island. You should look there. If you can't find it there, then I can't do anything about it, because our people have seen their existence when they were there before. Chapter 227 Looking for. Anjali took Quina and Zoro on board the ship that he came from, and then continued to look for the east. The boat went a long way, and went all the way to the east. They searched for a long time before they found an island in the east. The 3 of them finally got to the island, because the island is really too difficult. There is not even a place to park the boat, so they have sat around the island for several times before they found a place where they could put down the anchor in a sheltered place. The scenery on the island is still very beautiful, but the coconut groves and beaches are a particularly wonderful picture. When he started to go to the island, Anjali was still worried about whether he would be able to the attack of the three-eyed beasts, but now that Anjali and the others had circled the island, they found that the whole island was still very large. And the area is also very large, but they did not see any traces of any race when they walked on the island. The most important thing is that this island really seems to be like an uninhabited island. There is nothing. Anjali, I feel that this island is like an uninhabited island. We have come here with all our thoughts. Are we really going to return without success? For Zoro's question, Anjali still has a big question in his heart, because for him, he doesn't know how to answer this question, but now he has come to this place according to the instructions of his aunt. On the island, it is up to one's luck to be able to find the three-eyed pig. We still don't know whether the three-eyed pig is on this island or not. Please check it carefully. If there is no one, we will continue to look eastward. If we can really find a clue, we should be able to know something. It all depends on our lives. It is very difficult to find a race in this vast sea. On the island for a long time, and at this time, when the sun on the island is hot, Anjali has already felt that some of them are dehydrated, and Kuina, who is next to it, already has some of them. Can't stand it. Anjali is so hot now. Do you think there are people on this island? Even if there are people, I think they are going to escape the summer, otherwise we will go back to the cabin. Take a breath, then take a nap, or this is the case. I don't think we can last a day on this island, and besides, aren't you hungry? I'm hungry anyway, and I'm already thirsty. Zoro also thinks this way, because for him, although he is better than Kuina, he also feels that he can no longer hold on, and Anjali looks at the situation of two people. He also knows although my own ability is better than the two of them, the sun is also the hottest at noon now, if it is not. The island with any shelter continues to sway like this, and it may really be dehydrated in the end. Well, let's go back to the factory to escape the summer heat. Let's wait until the sun goes down and then come out and continue to look for it, because I always feel that this island seems to have some slight changes. But I don't know where the place is, which makes me have such a feeling. If it is really like this, we will look for it carefully in a while to see if there are any traces of the three-eyed tribe. The three returned to the cabin together and took out some dry food. Life at sea is very unfamiliar to others, but for Anjali and the three of them, it is very familiar, because they also travel between islands on weekdays. They were able to know exactly what was on each island, and before returning to the cabin, Anjali and the others climbed to the coconut tree by the sea and knocked down several large coconuts, ready to take them back to the cabin for solution. Sundial looked at the dry food that Kuina handed him, and with his sword, opened a small mouth in the coconut and handed it to Kuina. Zoro knew that he was a man, so he took out a coconut himself, and you took a small sip to himself in the same way, but he didn't drink it himself first, but turned and handed it to Anjali. Here's a drink for you, Anjali, you already took us around the whole island this morning. I didn't know that there was such a large area on this island. When we went around the boat, when I was walking on the island, I didn't feel that this small island could have such a large area, but now after I actually went to the island, I realized that the size of the island is really unimaginable. After they reported information to each other, they began to enjoy coconuts. Chapter 228 Breakthrough. After the three people had a full meal in the cabin, they returned to their respective cabins and took a nap. When they woke up, the sunlight outside was not enough. Anjali got off the boat first. Kuina and Zoro also followed in Anjali's footsteps and landed on the island again. Now it's cold and windy at this time, and it's a relatively good climate. Now let's look for it again. If we can't find it, then we will abandon the island, and then continue to drive east to see if there are other islands nearby, so that we can continue to search. Anjali felt that it was really a special waste for the three of them to be together. the time, so he divided the labor of 3 people to search in different directions, and the one that was passed was the center. In this case, the search in 3 directions can be faster, and the island is not particularly big. If anyone has something, just shout, the other 2 people can also hear it. Angeli was walking in the middle. When he had walked halfway through the entire island, he found that the island should still be a trace of someone's existence. Right, Angeli had already seen fire generated on the island. Traces, and judging from these traces, it should be that people have come to this island a few days ago. And it can be seen that they should have lived on this island for a while, otherwise there should not be so many trees in the fire, and this place was not searched in the morning, so it should be a slip through the net. The place. Guyana, Angeli, come here. Angeli and Yuna heard Zoro's shouting and ran to him one after another. What's going on here? Suddenly shouting like this, don't you know that you will be scared to death when you are like this? If there is no major discovery, you should still go back to the boat, and then the 3 of us will discuss it together, or else shouting on this island, being heard by other people or other races, do you think it will cause us great harm? Zoro pointed his right finger to the boulder in front of him, and said to Angeli. Looking at the boulder in front, why do I think it is like the entrance to a dungeon? We also searched this place at the very beginning, but it was not so detailed at that time. At the beginning, I found that the stone was placed in another place, but now when I came back, I found that the boulder had returned to this place. Should it be said that these places really exist? What about other creatures? After listening to what Zoro said, Angry turned around the boulder several times, and then he tapped the boulder lightly, and he felt that there should be a hollow inside. So Angeli felt that this should be regarded as one of his major discoveries, but although he knew that this boulder had some strange things, he didn't know how to activate this boulder, or to say move him somewhere. And now, although Angeli's ability is very strong, it's just that it can't make it move such a large stone. Flowers 0. When Kuina listened to the 2 of them chattering, he stretched out his hand and gently stroked the boulder. Suddenly, there was a soft thud. After the sound came out, it was really startled Kuina. He hurriedly took a few steps back. The whole boulder has been divided into 2.5 from the middle, and there is a black hole below it. I really don't know which is the mechanism. I just touched it casually and it suddenly became in this way. I said I didn't know what was going on in this place just now, but now looking at the hole, I feel like it's unfathomable inside. Otherwise, let's give up, go back to the boat, and then continue to wait here tomorrow. I don't believe they don't come out. Angeli looked at the pitch black hole. It was really a little scared, but in front of his 2 apprentices, how could he shrink like this? So he looked at the pitch black hole with courage. Then yes, Kuina and Zoro said, I will take the 2 of you down to have a look. I will walk in the front, and the 2 of you will walk behind me. If there is anything, the 2 of you will run away first. We must remember to return to our ship. Only in this way can I find you when I come out. Otherwise, where should I go to find you in this vast sea? And you have seen the whole island, there is no hiding place at all. Chapter 229-2. The 3 people slowly entered the pitch-black hole. Not long after they entered the hole, they were already besieged by the 3-eyed clan. So how could anyone find this place? This is one of our secret bases, so you can find it here, so it only shows that you are still too familiar with this place. If you are some spies or some other kind of people, then our whole race will be especially dangerous, and now I will collect all of you and wait for our prince to come. The 3 people were pushed into a room, and then a few people were arranged to guard them, and the rest had already left. The 3-eyed clan who spoke just now, went to the inside of the cave and reported to the people inside that 3 agents had been caught. And Angeli and the 3 of them stayed in the house where they were imprisoned. They looked at the 3-eyed people who were guarding them and didn't have much strength, although Angeli and the others could easily do it. He escaped, but now that he has found the nest of the 3-eyed clan, how could he leave this place for their own sake? You people really have made a lot of fuss. I'm here this time, just to see if your prince is living well here, and the most important thing is to see you 3-eyed clansmen, can you live peacefully in this place? If not, Then I hope you will follow me to one of my continents, because only in this way can you ensure the safety of your entire race. The questions that Anjali said. In fact, these three-eyed people don't have any hope at all, because now they have been hit to such a point that they feel that if they can live in peace, even if it is a very good thing, the most important thing is that for such a thing, they feel that some people above can manage it. Such a problem, and their ordinary clansmen, have no idea at all. Negotiable. The three of you just stay here obediently. After our patriarch arrives, you can continue to discuss with him, because these things have nothing to do with us ordinary people. Yes, because the patriarch of our entire group will go wherever he leads us. After Anjali knew about such a problem, he also felt that now the entire three-eyed clan can still elect a patriarch, which is already a very difficult thing, and the most important thing is that for such a problem in fact, he also has an idea in his mind. If you can fool the patriarch and hand over their prince to your own hands, then you can be considered to be able to complete your mission this time, and can easily solve the problem of their three-eyed clan, which can be regarded as doing it yourself. For a good thing, the three of them stayed in the room for a long time, and no one paid attention to him. At this time, Anjali felt that things should not develop in this direction, so he really wanted to go out of this room, and take a look at what's going on outside. Otherwise, how could it take so long without anyone to pay attention to your arrival? After all, no matter if it's good or bad, there should be someone here. Take a look and talk to yourself. Can I ask, where is your patriarch? Could it be that you three-eyed city have already settled in this place and still want the same scenery as before? I really think that you people don't know if your brain has been squeezed by the door or what is going on, and you have already fallen to such a level that you can still hold the air. Should you send someone to rush him again? For a question like Anjali, how can these ordinary clansmen know where the patriarch is and what the patriarch thinks, but now his ability is to guard a few of them here. So these three-eyed clan guards feel that they really can't help them. We don't know where our clan leader is. Besides, we are just the people who are responsible for guarding you. As for the other people, report to the above, that is also one of their things, and the division of labor in our three-eyed clan is very clear. And everyone only has their own ability, it is impossible to leapfrog, so you should stay here honestly and wait for our patriarch to summon you, otherwise, I can't handle things. Chapter 230 Apprenticeship. Finally, when the patriarch of the three-eyed clan was willing to see Anjali and the three of them, they were taken to another room blindfolded. I didn't expect that I would be able to see the famous Anjali in this place. The people of my tribe who were me just now wouldn't have any trouble. If I had known it was you, I would have been able to see you earlier. It's your turn. Anjali felt that this was just an excuse from the patriarch of the three-eyed clan, but he could also understand that now that he was under the eaves of people, he should still explain to him why he came here. So he told the chief of the three-eyed clan one of his reasons for coming here and asked them for their Prince Gratu. I heard before that your wife has reached a very genocide level. Now it seems that you have really ended up in this place. Do you think that you can avoid it when you go to 08 here? Is your whole genocide in danger? So under such a situation now, I think you should still put your website into my hands. Only in this way can I ensure the safety of your entire race. The patriarch of the three-eyed tribe is a very young age. The older one is an old man. He feels that the prince is the last hope for the revival of their entire race, so he doesn't want to hand over the prince at all, but he can also understand that according to the current strength of their entire three-eyed clan, it is also difficult to keep the entire race from being exterminated. I can understand what you mean, but you should also be able to implant what kind of person our prince is. And the most important thing is that after our entire race has reached such a point now, I still hope that our prince can become as a hope for the revival of the entire race, so I don't want to put it in your hands. Hearing that, the patriarch of the three-eyed clan refused his request. He knew that now without Leyland's methods, Anjali, who was unable to support the patriarch of the three-eyed clan, looked at the people in this room. People who are almost the highest level of their entire three-eyed clan have already arrived in this room. Anjali suddenly pulled up the arrow, and then swung it down at them all at once. The entire three-eyed tribe was already in chaos. When they found that Anjali didn't want to take their heads, but it was just to intimidate them, because the head of the entire three-eyed clan and their elders had already lost a scalp. Angalilu's hand has really left the entire three-eyed clan to their death because they felt that if this one fell on their necks, then they would be able to give their entire race all at once. If you destroy it, you can see that this is just one of my means. If you really want to fight against me, how can you think your prince can be kept in your hands? If he is still with me, maybe I can still use my ability to keep him safe. Anjali's thunderous method has really terrified them. They felt that if Anjali really wanted to exterminate them, it would be an easy thing to do. At this time, a door next to it had been pushed. It opened, and Ritu, the prince of the three-eyed race, slowly walked out of the door. Anjali, I found that you are a person of great wisdom, so I want to learn from you, apprentice. For an idea like Ritu, Anjali can still feel it in his heart, and he is sincere, but in such a situation now, for Anjali, he doesn't know what to do at all. How to teach Ritu, because he feels that his current ability is not very good. And he just learned some of his own martial arts. If he wants to teach someone, he still has to think about it, but Anjali knows that he really doesn't want to do such a way of thinking, because he thinks it's better to let things take their course. Anjali, just accept me. Although my ability is not too strong, I know that our entire three-eyed clan has an innate advantage of our own. If I can make use of my innate advantage, I can also have a great advantage the big one did, and the whole of our race rested on my shoulders. My shoulders are really too heavy. I also hope that someone can help me share some of the burden, and I also hope that everyone can see a process of my growth. Chapter 231 Inquiry. Anjali can understand what Ritu thinks now, but he can also clearly know that for a child as big as him, shouldering so many missions is really precious to him. Yes, and he can work so hard on such a road, he can be regarded as a child who can make Anjali feel motivated. Since you have such an idea, I will test you in a while. Is there such an ability? As you said, your entire three-eyed clan also has its own unique inheritance. If you can really have such a biography and I will give you some guidance, then you should be able to become a warrior of your entire three-eyed clan, and be able to pass it on, your entire three-eyed clan. Ritu can also be very happy with Anjali's answer, but he feels that taking advantage of such an opportunity, he still wants Anjali to agree to one of his requests. Anjali should be able to understand that now, like our entire three-eyed clan, we are on the verge of life and death. Didn't you say it just now? If you want to lead our entire three-eyed clan to not be invaded by foreign races, can you do it? If we can really do it, our entire three-eyed clan will be regarded as the highest king. For such a title, Anjali really dismissed it, because he felt that he was still a normal human being, and he didn't need a race like the three-eyed race to be the king himself. Ritu, you are the prince of the entire three-eyed clan, so in the future the entire three-eyed clan will be yours, and the family will also be where you will become the king, so you should be able to rest assured about such a thing. I don't have such an ambition at all, and for me, this kind of thing is also a problem that can't be blamed. I just want to see that your race will not be destroyed, which is already a very good idea. And for me, this kind of thing is actually something that Fei Chong can explain well. Ritu, after seeing that Anjali has agreed to his request, he is really very happy, because for him the safety of the race is the one thing he is most worried about now, since there is already someone who can help him. After taking up this responsibility, Ritu also felt that the burden on his shoulders was much lighter. Anjali, I really thank you very much, because this kind of thing has really overwhelmed me, and this situation has real meaning to me. A lot, moreover, for a person like me. How can I not easily know what my future path will look like? But now what I really want to do is to make myself very strong, because only in this way can I be able to protect my master. I will be able to make my race stronger in the future. Anjali could hear Ritu's rhetoric, because he could clearly know that if a child could think so much, then it was because of the compulsion of life, otherwise a child of this age should be considered innocent, but now he has already shouldered the fate and future of the entire race. how aggrieved his heart will be. Well, I have already agreed to a request like yours, so you should live a good life, and if you want to come with me, then I will take you with me. I've already told you, I want to train you into a true warrior, and let your race live well in this world, is the solemn promise I made to you. Angeli looked at the whole Three Eyes. The people of the Three-Eyed clan lived in the underground castle. He felt very unbelievable, because the people of the Three-Eyed clan themselves should live on this island. Aren't you the people who were supposed to live on the island? Why did you hide in this underground castle? What kind of reason made you all come to this place? Jera Nuo Zhao's too knew that he was very embarrassed to say this, but he should also be able to understand that the reason why the boy asked this was not out of curiosity. It was because he felt that he had 3 eyes on his body now, so he wanted to make things clear, so Gratu said to Angeli. A few days ago, we lived on an island outside, but a few days ago, a group of pirates suddenly came to this island, and our warriors of the Three-Eyed tribe couldn't beat them at all, so for the safety of one of our own races, there is no way we can avoid this dungeon.